You know what? It's okay. It's okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Craig Hickman. I'm the state senator from Dennett, Senate District 14, which is 11 towns in southern Kennebec County, including my hometown of Winthrop. This morning, we have work sessions on our agenda, 3 of them, and that will be followed by 2 language reviews of bills that we have already voted out. But before we begin our agenda, I'd like to have the committee introduce itself. I'll begin on my screen with Senator Meermont.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Meermont. I represent Senate District 12 down here in Knox County on the beautiful mid-coast in a lovely morning.
Representative Doloff.
Good morning, Representative Joe Sandola from District 115 in the Western Mountains in Knoxville County.
Senator Farron.
Good morning, Brad Farron, representing Senate District 3 up here on the banks of the Kennebec River and Orange Walk this morning.
Representative Wood.
Good morning. I'm Barb Wood, and I represent House District 38, which is the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Representative Sapika.
Good morning. I'm Representative Laura Sapika, and I represent District 126, which is a portion of Bangor.
And Jeremy Chiazzo.
Good morning, Chris Chiazzo, House District 28, also beautiful west of Scarborough.
We have with us today our 2 analysts, Sam Prower and Janet Stocco, and our awesome clerk, Karen Montel. So the purpose of our work today is for the committee to receive information from staff and the department and any others in order for us to consider legislative proposals before us and make recommendations or reports to the legislature. Only committee members, the committee analysts, and those specifically invited by the chair to attend will be participating in the work session using Zoom today. For members of the public who wish to observe this meeting, it is being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. And if you're an interested party, you may already be attending as a part of this webinar. This is being broadcast live, both on audio and video. It will be recorded. And the chat function is only for people who have technical issues. If you do hear a comment or a question and you have an answer that no one has provided, please raise your hand and it will be up to the discretion of the chair to call on you. So please don't get offended if we don't. We usually do. And so we are going to take the bills up in this order: LD 1927, LD 1906, LD 1643, and then we will have amendment reviews on LD 1782 and LD 1751. And so with that, Representative Kinney has joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself this morning? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Mary Ann Kinney, House District 99.
Thank you. With that, I will open the work session on LD 1927 and act to authorize certain off-premises sales of adult use marijuana, sponsored by Representative Dillingham of Oxford. Sam, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Senator Hickman, and good morning, everyone. Just pulling my share screen up. All right, is that showing up for everyone?
Yes.
Great. So this bill authorizes the Department of Administrative and Financial Services Office of Marijuana Policy to issue permits to marijuana store licensees for the off-premises sales of adult use marijuana or adult use marijuana products, and provides certain limitations on those permits. The permit limitations include, first, that sales at the specified event may not be for a period of greater than 3 days. The second is that sales may not be approved for anywhere other than the specified event. And also that the consumption of adult use marijuana or adult use marijuana products may not be permitted at the location of sale at the specified event. And then finally, that a marijuana store licensee applying for a permit must first obtain approval from the municipality in which the specified event is located before the department may issue a permit. I just want to point out, just pause here for a second. I noticed a error in my bill analysis. I wrote or here, this should be an and. These are all permit limitations. So just don't want to confuse anybody.
Thank you, Sam.
Moving forward, this bill also requires the department to develop guidance documents for compliance with these permits and to adopt routine technical rules for the administration of the permits, and allows the licensee to transport marijuana between the licensed premises and the specified event. Moving on, I have provided just a little bit of context and links for our current law in the adult use program. As provided on one of my previous bill analyses, I just put the definition of marijuana store right here for everyone to see. These are the specific types of licensees that are envisioned by the bill. So we're not talking about cultivation or manufacturing facilities. We're just talking about marijuana stores. Also, even though the bill does not speak to the verification of age at sale, the section 504 subsection 4 in Title 28B still applies to require the verification of age at sale. And then I have some additional notes here as well. This first one is probably something everyone's familiar with after our work session on Wednesday, but I didn't know which we were going to take up first when I was putting the bill analysis together. And this is just kind of a brief summary of how off-premises sales are handled in the medical program versus the adult use program. And as I mentioned before, because the program was set up differently and adult use is about the way the adult use program is set up is to authorize a licensee, at their facility. You really, in this case, need explicit authorization for any sales that are happening off premises. And then finally, I included just a link to Title 28A for farmers market, for the authorization to sell at farmers markets and what that provision currently reads like. And then before moving on, I have also sent the committee the proposed amendment from Representative McCrate, which I'm happy to walk the committee through, but I did want to give her the opportunity to present that to you herself first. But one note I will make on that, just to avoid any confusion up front, I was looking at the bill as currently drafted, and the bill talks about marijuana store licensees, which I think makes sense, but also the way we usually talk about this in statute is just to say a marijuana store. So I helped to put that amendment together. I made that edit in the amendment, and it's not changing the scope of who this bill is talking about in any meaningful way. It's just making it consistent with the rest of the statute. So with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Sam. Before we move on to Representative McCrate's amendment, can you please keep your screen shared, sir?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just want you to click on the link that you have under the retail and taste testing at farmers markets.
Sure.
And just briefly scroll through that so that folks who are watching or listening to this for the first time can see that we do have a model for an event that allows for something new to happen that didn't happen before. This was first passed in 2017. It was a bill I sponsored, and then we recodified it, if you will, in 2019. And if you scroll back up, Sam, I just wanted to point out a few of the conditions here that are not either in the original bill or in the amendment that could be important for the committee to consider. Please scroll down. I'm trying to find it. Please scroll down. Please scroll down. So do you see item H where it says all activities authorized under this section must be conducted within the hours of retail sales established in this title and may not be conducted in any municipality where on-premises or off-premises sales are not allowed pursuant to Chapter 15. I just wanted to point that out because when we added this to the statute for liquor, we wanted to make sure that a farmer's market that may be the host of this event where they could sell wouldn't be extended past any hours that were already authorized by this title or by local law. And then I also believe that under the farmer's market authorization section, this is something that is also not contemplated in the cannabis legislation in front of us, but it says that if the farmer's market is held on private property, the application must include a written statement signed by the owner of the property permitting the sale or taste testing of wine, spirits, or malt liquor in accordance with this section. Now, I don't want to confuse anyone to think that we're saying that these cannabis products can be tasted on site. So we can take the taste testing part out, but permitting the sale is what we're really talking about here. And so you can see that we put a lot of belt and suspenders on the farmer's market law so that none of the farmers markets organizers or vendors would think that they could act in some way outside of what was explicitly allowed for and required by the law. Are there any questions about this title or this provision, which is relatively new? And unfortunately, last year, summer before last, there weren't a lot of farmers markets, but the reviews were pretty good from 17 to 19, which is why we expanded it in 19 to make sure that more people could participate in this. Are there any questions from the committee about how that might work and be related to this bill? And if not, you can stop sharing your screen, Sam, and I'll be quiet. And I will allow Representative McCray. Oh, Sam, go ahead.
I just, that reminded me when we went through this, I wanted to make one more clarification about the bill at hand. And this is particularly in when you're in consideration of the farmers market provisions for alcohol, which is that this bill as drafted just says a specified event rather than restricting it to a farmers market. So it is broader. And I just want to make sure everyone's clear.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I would have said the same. This bill contemplates events that might be sponsored by the industry. And we can talk about that more as we deliberate the bill. With that, Representative McCray, would you like to talk about your amendment and why you have asked us to consider it?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize for being late. I had an unfortunate incident involving black ice and a parking lot. So so it slowed me down a little bit.
Well, thank you for being here. And you can also introduce yourself since you joined us.
I'm Jay McCray, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and Northeast Brunswick, and not real good on icy.
Well, we're glad you're safe and sound. Black ice can be rather frightening when you hit it the wrong way.
It was surprising. I want to thank Sam for putting this amendment together so quickly, and a couple of suggestions in it. If we're going to go forward with this, I wondered, I appreciate the what's the word you use, Senator Hickman, the belts and suspenders or the boundaries around it. But I wanted to suggest that we also, like we did with an earlier bill, excuse me, not to include that those selling had to have some training in identifying underage so that they wouldn't be selling to underage. And as we've heard from public health concerned people about restricting this to non-smoking items that would not be smoked. So that would be other products, other marijuana products. So those were the things I had suggested we might consider if we're going to go forward with this.
Thank you, Representative McCray. Chairman Chiazza.
Thank you, Senator Hickman. I want to applaud my colleague, Representative McCray. I am not in support of this bill, but I am in support of it now because of her amendment. So I appreciate her getting us to that middle ground. It's not an easy task with us, so I appreciate that effort. I did have a question either for the representative or for Sam. I'd like to know, does vaping classify as smoking, or is that a separate category of delivery or mechanism? Sam, if you would, or Senator, whoever you think should answer.
I need to double check. I think it probably classifies as smoking, but I don't want to say for sure without double checking.
And
So I
okay.
will follow up on that.
And then I would just ask the representative if it is separate, would she want that included? And if not, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that there was a distinction there if necessary.
Well, it's a great question, and it's vaping is a huge concern. Becca Bolas is in the attendees room. If we wanted to bring her in, she's the with the Public Health Association at the leave of the chair.
Yes, thank you, Representative McCray. Let's see. First, I'll ask Rebecca Bullis, if you can hear me, are you willing to answer the question that was asked? If so, raise your hand and I will promote you to the group. I just want to make sure she's here and listening. Great. And I will get to our committee members in 1 second, but let us first get this question answered.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Sure, good morning. My name is Becca Bolas and I'm Executive Director of Maine Public Health Association. I missed your question though, Representative McCray, so I actually don't know if I can answer it. I just, if you could please ask it again.
Representative McCray, you may
Thank you,
proceed.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Becca. The question came from Representative Chiazzo about whether the restriction I've suggested in the amendment about non-smoking, that this would be limited to non-smoking products. Would that, we're asking about whether vaping is considered within that category or a separate category. The vaping.
Right now, vaping is under our smoke-free laws. And so if you're in a place where we have a smoke-free law, you are not supposed to be vaping. So yes, that I believe that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And I would, to further respond to Representative Chiazzo, I would include vaping under this amendment, under that category.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Bullis while she is here? Great. Thank you for being here. Representative Kenny, followed by Senator Meermont, followed by Representative Doloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be for Representative McCray. With the no smoking products, and I'm definitely in favor of this. It's we're not enforcing the no smoking in public as it is, so I don't want to have those products available in an open space where children are likely to be present. What about the smoking paraphernalia? Because a lot of times these places also sell vats. Should we limit that they can't bring that to an outside market as well? Because they could bring in their own product and people may not even know.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Kenny, I just want to be clear on the question. Are you asking if we would explicitly prohibit the sale of any smoking paraphernalia? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, is whether or not she would also want, if we would also want to include, as was said, water pipes, things like that. Because it does concern me that for this off premise, because I don't know about the stores that sell those things, only those things, but I don't think they sell only, I don't know, I've never been in one of these shops, so I have no interest. I'm kind of with Chairman Chiazzo. It's I'm not a huge fan of a lot of this, and this is very new, and alcohol has been allowed for a long period of time. So the alcohol was only just recently allowed, and as you said, Senator Hickman or Chairman Hickman, yeah, either way. There's all these formalities.
It's all good.
It's fairly new, and unfortunately with the pandemic, a lot of these things didn't happen recently, so we don't have a lot of data on how the alcohol sales are happening. And I definitely agree, we definitely can't have the tasting, because that's already kind of in law that you can't use these products in public. But I know I go to the grocery store, I get out of my car and the whole parking lot smells like pot. And I show up with my kids. Granted, my kids are a little older, but they're still underage for being able to consume the adult use products. So I do have some concerns, because if this were at a concert or at concerts, everybody brings it in, and but I want to make sure we do this right, because this is a very new product in the Maine market. We don't have a lot of data on the alcohol parts that it was recently passed, and I want to make sure we do this right to protect the public that, like myself, don't want anything to do with this product as an adult use product, recreational type product.
Thank you, Representative. I am pretty certain, and I will have Ms. Poulos raise her hand to correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't have to promote her, she can just be allowed to talk, is that you cannot sell any tobacco products without a tobacco license. And smoking paraphernalia are considered tobacco products under the definition of the law, which basically means this bill would not allow already, just by writing it the way it is, would not allow anyone to legally sell any paraphernalia that is a tobacco product at a special event for off-premises sale of cannabis products only. Representative McCray.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Yes, I agree with what you just said. And the only way I would be comfortable with it is as Representative McKinney described. And I think because we already have that you just described in law, I think this would be restricting to edibles, I think. If we're going to do it at all, and I'm not saying I love this bill, but if we're going to do it at all, I think these protections are important.
Senator Merrimont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think part of this is still the leftover for so many years of marijuana attitudes that were just not based on reality. And we have this, it was great that you showed the equivalent in the farmers markets of alcohol. I don't drink and I see a lot of damage from alcohol, but I tried to support local business by bringing bills to allow sales at farmers market. And this discussion was pretty similar about, well, they're going to take it and then they're going to drink. I have not seen people swilling bottles of wine at the farmers market. It's prohibited, it's enforced. Bringing the product from the legal stores, which means the bud, smokable, edible, whatever, it provides a place to expand your business and to sell a legal product to adults of legal age. They're not going to be able to stand there and smoke it, even though they probably have some in their pocket. They're not going to stand there and smoke it. They're just looking at some samples and maybe taking something home. The farmers market would enforce their smoking rules and anything else that needs to keep the farmers market a family-friendly place. And that includes the overuse of odors, smoking, all these things. So that part I don't support at all. You've already said that it covers smoking paraphernalia, which is too bad. It cuts out a part of their market because, again, they're not allowed to smoke it there. And just because they come and can represent their business and provide a convenience for people who want their product doesn't change any of the other rules. That just harkens back to, well, a lot of other stuff, because I do respect that people are saying it. I just don't believe that it's the case and that we should proceed from older ideas that have not proven out and aren't proving out by taking the lead with the alcohol part. Thank you.
Representative Doloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If this passes, does this mean that people can set up booths at our the main state fairs that go on? If somebody could answer that, and then I have a
Representative.
scenario.
I
I mean,
will-
you talked about having it at farmer markets, but then it can extend maybe that people could have booths at the fairs. Am I wrong in thinking that?
So the bill would require that both the fair has to approve of it, the municipality where the fair is has to approve of it, and then the department would have to approve of it, not necessarily in all of those orders. And so the possibility exists, yes, because it is a special event. A farmer's market or a fair is a special event. But if it's a family-friendly event that's not just for adults only, I guess my guess is that they might not approve of it. I could be wrong, depends on the community, but it is a possibility, but everyone has to approve it and be on board. And wherever that fair is, has to be in a town that has already opted in to have marijuana stores. It can't just be anywhere that is not the case. This is unlike the other bill, the delivery bill. This one is specifically only allowed where municipality has given approval for a marijuana store to exist in the first place. Sam, did you want to also correct me if I'm wrong or answer that question?
I have a few comments, some related to that question and some related to previous questions. But just to, I guess, answer that question directly. I guess the answer is, as you said, Senator Hickman, is that with municipal approval, yes, this could be, someone could set up a booth at a fair or a farmer's market or another type of event. One thing that I want to point out about this is that while the bill requires that the licensee gain municipal approval before the department may issue a permit, it actually doesn't restrict those permits to be just for towns that have opted in. I don't know why or if a town would opt in to allowing this at a specified event if they wouldn't allow a store, but that is a possibility left open by the bill as drafted. So if the committee is concerned about that, that should be clarified in the bill as well. And I had some other comments, but I don't want to cut off people's thought processes, so I can come back to those if you'd like.
Thank you, Sam. I just wanted to check the original bill because I read it incorrectly, but yes, I see what you mean. Representative Doloff, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sam, for clarifying that. And thank you, Representative McCray, for putting the amendment in, but I don't like this bill. I don't think we have any need for it to be in farmer's market. It seems like on my ride to Augusta, even in my little town of Rumford, Mexico area, there's a lot of stores already. I mean, almost on every corner. So I don't feel they need to be in the farmer's market or in the fairs. And I'm sorry, I appreciate what Jay was trying to do. Absolutely. But I just don't want children, underage people. I don't even want them to see the gummies that you could buy or the paraffin. I'm sorry. I know I'm old, but I just think it belongs in a brick and mortar store and not out. So that's all I'm going to say. And I thank you
Thank you,
for letting me speak.
Representative Kenny, followed by Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Doloff's comments on the fairs hit a real nerve with me, and so I'm going to back off on the paraphernalia piece, because I know that I know at the Blue Hill Fair, when I exhibit there, they have their glass water pipes and they're banging them against the side of the pipe all week weekend long, and it's loud, it's obnoxious, and they don't break apparently. So I guess I'd be all right with those being sold to take, so they can have that part of the business. But then also going to the fair piece, in the bill, limitations on these permit issued by the department under the section for a specified event may not authorize sales at a specified event for a period greater than 3 days. And most of our ag fairs are not, most of our ag fairs are greater than 3 days, so they would not be permitted. So I think about the Blue Hill Fair that I mentioned is a 5-day fair. Freiburg Fair that I go to is an 8-day fair. The Windsor Fair is 8 days. So greater than 3 days. So the Common Ground Fair, which is right in my backyard, is only 3 days. So I guess I would see that they could possibly do that there. That concerns me because as it is, some of the smells that are around there just from, I think of Sweet Annie. Oh my gosh, it's an invasive species and they still bring it to the fair. And oh my gosh, so many people some people love the smell of it. The smell doesn't bother me, but I know that it bothers some of the people that work for me. And I always end up hearing people say that they just can't stand the smell, that it gives them terrible headaches and things like that. I'd be concerned though, when I go to the fairs, I actually tried to present a bill about smoking at the fairs, and I found out that we already had a bill that you can't smoke at the fairs, and it's not well enforced. And that's probably my biggest issue is we're not enforcing current law. So what is to say that we'll enforce to ensure that these products are not being consumed, they're not being, that the smoking doesn't happen, because we know it is happening. Just walk out in a parking lot anywhere, you can smell the smell of, some people think it's sweet. I think it's nasty. I think it smells like skunk, but that personal opinion, I get that. I had someone come into one of my classes the other day, obviously had just taken a hit, walked into my class and reeked of it. Unfortunately, this particular person is underage and shouldn't have had it. So probably was an illegal product, illegally obtained product. And these things are not being enforced, and that is a concern. And to the piece on limiting to edibles, I would like to see, some people don't have a medical card, but would like to have sobs and things like that for various issues. And they would still fall under the adult use if they don't have a medical card. So I wouldn't have a problem necessarily with those being sold if we put in really good restrictions to protect. As I said, we've got to protect the kids. We've got to protect the public that doesn't want this product. And maybe we make it that I don't know, we've got to come up with something so that things aren't just right out there in the open for kids to go, oh, Mom, what's that? I am raising children, they do that. So it's a tough thing to do. Yeah.
Representative Wood, I'm going to just sneak over to Sam because I know that he wants to address what Representative Kenny just said. I saw his hand go up. He's probably thinking what I'm thinking. So Sam, go on.
All right. I just want to clarify for everybody, so I make sure that we're. I just want to make sure there's no confusion about the bill at hand. And then I also looked at some of the current smoking provisions, and I also just want to note something that was raised earlier too. So the permit limitations in this bill say that the department may not authorize the sales at a specified event for a period of greater than 3 days. And I think that language is tied to the authorization for the sales, not tied to the length of the event. So I think that, for these events that are happening for like 5 or 8 days, I don't know what it's like to get a booth at those events. It may be prohibitive, but it could be that someone were to get a booth for 3 days at an 8-day event. Does that Does that make sense? It's leaving open that space, and I don't know how those work. So I just wanted to, if that's something you want to prohibit with this bill, I think that's something we can clarify. But I wanted to make that clear. And then I did just pull up, and this is my first look at our smoking laws, like in Title 22, because they're separate from the 28B provisions in marijuana. But I just wanted to note, I pulled up Title 22, Section 1542, and I do see that we have a number of limitations on smoking in public places. And one of those limitations is smoking is also prohibited in outdoor areas of a facility where children may be present. So that probably is covering things like fairs. And I will note that the definition of smoking in that title does not restrict, it's not about smoking tobacco. It's actually just about smoking generally. There are some references to smoking tobacco, but I think that at least the way I read it, the definition looks broad enough to cover smoking marijuana. So I wanted to point that out.
Put that on the screen.
Sure.
Thank you. That way everybody can see the definition and can read into it or out of it what they like. But
I could, and the other reason I wanted to bring this up is because we actually reference this section, so it's right here, and the first sentence talks about heated tobacco or plant product intended for human consumption, and we cross-reference this in 28B when we talk about smoking. So the other thing I was going to suggest, if the committee is interested in making sure that smoking products if the committee is interested in making sure that it's only really edibles that are being sold at these specified events, and also to the exclusion of vaping, I think that you would want to cross-reference this definition so we can cover electronic smoking device, because we don't really talk about vaping directly in Title 28B.
thank you, Sam. And I have one other question. If you could put up on your screen, please, the definition of marijuana products from Title 28B.
Absolutely. Just let me move around. I think I had it in my bill analysis. I don't. Just bear with me while I move to it. And I'm sorry if the movement is hard to look at on the shared screen. All right, it's right here. Has that filled in for everybody now?
Thank you, yes. And so as you can see, marijuana product includes, but is not limited to, an edible marijuana product, a marijuana ointment, and a marijuana tincture. And I just wanted Representative Kinney to see that, because she had made mention of the fact that perhaps we shouldn't be prohibiting the sale of an ointment or a tincture at a special event. So I just wanted people to see that even if we were to eliminate smoking products or products that could be smoked, like the bud, these other things can't necessarily be smoked, I don't think. I don't know that anyone's ever smoked a marijuana tincture because that's in liquid form, but there you have it. Those are the products that, unless we were to prohibit them and change the definition of what we're using in this proposed amendment and bill, those other things would be allowed. And I don't know if Representative McCray was okay with that, not okay with that, but we'll come back to that. I'm going to go to Representative Wood, who's been waiting patiently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question. I think it's for Sam. We've had a lot of conversation about cameras, and with another bill the other day, we even talked about body cams for delivery to people's homes. So I believe cameras are required at brick and mortar retail stores. Is that correct for adult use?
I believe that is within the rule, so that the statute doesn't speak directly about cameras, but it does allow the department to set security requirements. And I think that is in the rule, but the department might be able to speak directly to that better than I can.
Is there somebody from the department?
I'm sure there is. If you want, give me 1 second, I will invite the director to answer that question. Director Gunnarsson will be joining us shortly. Good morning, Director.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, so thank you for the question, Representative. This is one of the well, 7 or 8 questions.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, Eric Gunderson, Director of the Office of Marijuana Policy.
Thank you.
So thank you for the question. This is one of the 7 or 8 questions that we've kind of jotted down as the conversation has evolved here. But as far as security is required, Sam is right. It's within the program rule where we define what those security requirements are for retail sales. And again, we have specific language saying at the point of retail sale, it must be on video, able to identify faces to ensure compliance with the 21 plus sales, essentially. So that certainly would be a challenge in these scenarios. And if the committee was to move forward, the allowance for security in rules or kind of at least some guidance or clarity of what you would expect around that would be helpful for us.
Thank you, Director. Representative Wood.
Yes, thank you. So the current rules, you're saying, not the rules that we're going to be looking at a little later on, but the current rules require the video capture of a sale.
Correct.
Okay. Are there other things? I mean, you said you have 7 or 8 questions, but I guess I brought this up the other day. We have a lot of rules for retail stores. And I don't know which of those will translate well to a booth at a farmer's market and which things like requiring a camera would be difficult to have happen at a farmer's market. Can you speak?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it certainly would present challenges for us to figure out what's actually feasible, what would need to be in place for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But I think that's just part of the rulemaking process. We would circle up internally, discuss the challenges, the parameters, really what we need in place to achieve our underlying mission with what we do here, propose those rules, get feedback, and then go through that process. And I think both with those internal conversations and feedback that we receive and conversations that we would have, it certainly would not look like the requirements that they have for brick and mortar stores just because of the challenges of these remote sales. But certainly we would hope that there would be some requirements in there to help ensure compliance, even though ensuring overall compliance becomes incredibly challenging in these scenarios.
Okay. I don't know, Mr. Chair, whether you're going to allow time for the office to respond to other things that have been brought up that Mr. Gunderson, Director Gunderson mentioned.
Of course. I have a few questions for him as well, based upon what we already talked about. But yes, Representative Wood, we certainly shall. Representative Director Gunderson, we did have a discussion about body cameras related to delivery the other day. Like, I guess I'm wondering if that would be something that would be appropriate here.
I think that could be feasible. I think that's certainly a conversation that we would have here internally and with some of our industry stakeholders to see if that was feasible. I'm not saying that's where we would end up, but it certainly would be part of the conversation for sure.
And if this were to pass and one of the permit requests would be to allow for the off-premise sale at a trade show, for instance, in a municipality that had a center that would approve of it, would you, I don't even know, are there portable security cameras for trade shows, or would, again, body cams be the best way to go about it?
That would be research that we would do leading up to writing the rules. Again, to figuring out what's feasible, what's not, what works both for the industry side, if this was to move forward, that accomplishes what we think we need to accomplish here.
Okay, great. Representative Kinney, followed by Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just thank Representative Wood for bringing up the camera piece. That I hadn't even thought about that part on this. I like the idea of possibly the body cameras. They do move around. I want to make sure that they don't get those blocked at any point, whereas a stationary camera could possibly work. I know the ag fairs that I attend and a lot of other events that I attend with my maple products, which are a lot easier to take places. I just want to say it's easier to take those off premise with a mobile license, which I do have. There's a lot of these places have Wi-Fi available. So would it be possible? I wonder if there's, I know in my sugar house, we have cameras set up to watch the sap come in so our tanks don't overflow in the middle of the night. And that's all connected wireless through the Wi-Fi connection. So I wonder if there must be some camera systems, and this would probably be something we should look into and find out if there are some camera systems that can be connected to possibly a DVR back home or in the store, in the brick and mortar store, that could connect with a camera at a show. And if when you set up at these places, especially if it's more than one day, you're most likely not just going to be on a table, you'll be in some kind of a portable tent. And maybe one of the ways to help protect the consumer, the other visitors that don't necessarily want this, is that maybe we have to have some sort of enclosed structure, and that could be just a tent. They make some, even pop-up tents come with sides. I know the one I bought at Sam's Club came with sides. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw some ideas out there. Is all I'm doing with some of this, trying to help the people that are hesitant about the product, but at the same time are looking at the business side of it, and also trying to help with enforcement, because if it's slightly more enclosed, it's easier to enforce. I don't know. I'm not on that side of it, and I don't see Representative Harrington here today, so I don't know. I don't know if he's around, but he could certainly weigh in on the part around where law enforcement would fall into place.
Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say I appreciate someone who goes to fairs. Representative Kinney can give personal experience, but my antenna went up around body cameras for this particular use because of the privacy of everybody else around. It seems different to me than delivering to somebody's house or curbside. It's a privacy concern. But I also heard Director Gunderson saying that's not a decision. It's something they think about. But I just wanted to throw out that the privacy of other fairgoers concerns me.
Thank you, Jay. Representative McCray. Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm feeling like we're really trying to make this work. And I think it's a new business. It's only been around for a year and a half. We're really just trying to make the program work in retail. We're looking at expanding to home delivery, which I support. I think is the next step. But I really feel like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, or whatever it is, on this bill. I think there's a lot more that needs to be talked about and looked at. Whether it's an enclosure, whether it includes smoking, whether it includes cameras, and I'm sure there's a list of other things. So I just wanted to say that I'm not going to be supporting this bill. I think it can come back in another session. with some more work done on it and when we have more experience with adult use. Thanks.
Chairman Piazza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am, as I mentioned initially, is initially opposed to this bill. I appreciate Representative McCrate's attempt at compromise. I think we could still get there. I think a simple solution would be that we keep all of the retail rules in place and require the storefront owner to abide by them, and they have to find a way to recreate that in a setting that's either a fair or a farmer's market or something that allows privacy, allows them to limit entry into the tent or the space, if you will, of underage people, and has a way for OMP. Let them figure that out. We just don't want to prohibit that from happening. If they can come up with a resolution and a solution to it that everybody can work with, then I think it should proceed. But I think we should let the experts handle that. I think if we allow it with the restrictions that we have in place for brick and mortar retail establishments, I think that's something that the industry can work out with the department to try and figure out what that looks like and how best to approach that. So we won't prohibit it. We'll just allow it as long as they can meet the restrictions and the criteria that we put in for regular retail establishments. Again, I'm not suggesting that as an amendment or proposal. I'm saying that is another way we could address the issues and concerns, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I agree that if we authorize the limited off-premise sale, we could decide to allow the department to figure out the best way to implement that, because nothing can happen until they approve of it. But right now, they can't even consider approving of it because it is explicitly prohibited in the law. So if nothing else, we just remove the prohibition and allow the department to figure out the best way forward. Or we could be more prescriptive ourselves and say, this can only be allowed at an event that's a professional trade show in a building and not any outdoor fair. But that's just an idea to throw out with the committee as well. We can leave it open-ended for the department to figure out, or we can figure it out ourselves. Sam.
Thank you, Senator Hickman. So I just wanted to, this is actually somewhat related to what was just being discussed, but it also speaks to an earlier point that was discussed in the committee. So the bill as written allows the department to permit limited like off-premise sales of adult use marijuana. It does not speak to what else a licensee may be selling. So to the extent that there are things that a licensee would sell that are not within the scope of what the department actually approves, I don't know, for instance, looking at the bill, if it would prohibit t-shirts, or I know that for selling tobacco products, I think you need to have a license. I don't know that there's actually a limitation in this bill on the ability to sell, smoking devices and adult use marijuana at the off-premise event. So that is something to think about. You can give it to the department to develop rules and kind of mirror the way you do it at in a marijuana store. But also for anything that you don't want a licensee to be able to do, I think you should say it explicitly in the law. That way, you know ahead of time what to expect. So that's regardless of how you go, what kinds of restrictions or limitations you put on. I would encourage to assume nothing, that's what I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sam. I was just looking up some other thing and I can't find it yet. So Director Gunderson, given that you've been listening, I will ask you just to open-end discuss some of what you've heard, and if any of this you guys would be able to work with. Do you need, that's my question. It's open-ended.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we're certainly going to implement whatever the legislature passes to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
So a few questions, I think clarity would help if this were to pass. First one being multiple permits. So it authorizes the department to issue a permit for 3 days. I think each permit would be unique in nature. So I think it opens the door for 3-day permit, 3-day permit, 3-day permit, 3-day permit. If that's what the legislature is looking to do, that's fine. If that's not what you're looking to do, just understand that you could get permit after permit and the department would have no authority to not issue it. Municipal approval, it's not really defined. A little bit more clarity of what you mean, because there's so many different ways in which we could receive that. So what type of local approval are you looking for?
I have a question, Director, if you could stop right there.
Sure.
And actually I'll ask Sam, in the law now, what does it take for a municipality to opt into a marijuana store? And could we simply cross-reference that section for this?
Let me just take a minute to pull it up so I don't lead you down the wrong path.
Director Gunderson, you could continue while he's looking that up, because I know in the liquor law, when we cross-referenced it in the farmer's market statute, we basically said that municipal approval has to be garnered in the same way as over here.
Yeah, I can, well, it would be vote of the town's governing body through the opt-in process, but Sam can offer more clarity, obviously. In section 1, paragraph 3, guidance, not really sure what that is. It sounds like rules to me. That's what our rules are, our guidance on how we interpret it and how we enforce it. I have locations defined question mark. I think there's been conversation around that already. Senator Hickman, you alluded to approval from both a private entity, the town, and the office of the department to deny. I'm not quite sure what criteria in here. I don't think there is criteria for us to deny other than the fact that they would have to have a retail marijuana store license and have that local approval. So I don't know if that was something you wanted to expand upon, but just clarity there. We talked about security. Looking for a definition of what special event is. Not quite sure what that is. I think we talked a little bit, the group has talked about what that is, just clarity there to make sure that we understand what the legislature is thinking as far as what a special event is. And then the last one I have here, Sam touched upon, just clarity as far as other than whatever the cannabis products, what would they be able to sell with these special licenses?
Okay, thank you, Director. That's good for the committee to hear. I was looking up another amendment to another law where a special event license might be permitted. And we could say, including but not limited to this, and this, so that would give the department an idea of what kinds of special events. And I think, Director, it's also safe to say that a guidance document isn't exactly a rule. I know the Department of Ag does guidance documents a lot. And they may refer to rule, but basically a guidance document lets a participant in a regulated industry know. Senator Mearmont, will you mute, please? Thank you. I can't explain it. I think Representative Kenny can probably explain a little bit better, but I know that a guidance document is different and distinct from a rule. I'm going to go to Representative Kenny, followed by Representative McCray, followed by Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree. There are opportunities for guidance documents that are not necessarily rules that do help producers and so forth throughout the industry. I'm a little concerned that the way that this is written on the period of greater than 3 days, that permit after permit, so we could have concurrent permits possibly being issued to someone. And I think just because of certain events like the agricultural fairs, I would like to hear possibly from the Maine Association of Agricultural Fairs on this. I don't think that they're even in here, but maybe we could request that someone come. Maybe we'll have to table this and come back to it again, because I think we're having a great discussion on this bill. But with our agricultural fairs, they're very family friendly. Little kids are at these events, and when the referendum first passed, it was an error in writing, and we had to fix to ensure that children were not going to have access to recreational marijuana. So we did that as a legislature. We worked together and we fixed that. We changed the idea of having towns having to opt out to towns having to opt in, or municipalities having to opt in versus opt out, so that everyone was opted out until they opted in, which helped a lot of municipalities. I know mine panicked and before we made that change and did an opt out and codified that, but this made it simpler to change that language a little bit, and that's why the legislature has the opportunity to change language in a referendum. So and I do want to make sure we're protecting our children, and that's we talked the other day at length about how we need to protect the kids, make sure that someone is of legal age. The legal age for purchasing recreational products for this adult use product, which is what we're discussing with this. This isn't about the medical program going out to these events. This is about the adult use program going to these events. So we've got to make sure that at events like the ag fairs, where you have the carnival rides and the games and food and everything, with a lot of small children around, we want to make, well, even teenagers, the teenagers show up at night. And I want to make sure we are protecting them. And I would want to see more help maybe with this greater than 3 days, that they couldn't have, that a store couldn't have a concurrent license. So if it's an event greater than 3 days, then they don't go to that event.
Thank you, Representative. I also want to say that the committee again could define special events as cannabis conventions, trade shows, and could say a special event does not mean an agricultural fair. And in that case, it wouldn't be allowed. No one from an agricultural fair would be able to apply for this permit, and we could prohibit that in the law so that the department wouldn't have to think about it at all. So I just want to be clear that we can make this as narrow as we want or as broad as we want. It just determines, if we do it, we can define the terms. Representative McCray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we were in the first year, I would say let's carry this over. I don't think this is ready, and I'd like to suggest ought not to pass.
It's been moved ought not to pass. Representative McCray, is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Chairman Piazza. Is there any discussion on the motion? I am going to go to Sam and then go to Representative Corey and then Representative Doloff.
All right, I'm just following up on the local authorization piece. The reason I wanted to double check is because it's the way it's written is it's got a very belt and suspenders approach, which is why I didn't want to get it wrong by trying to paraphrase it. So we have two sections in 28B that talk about local regulation of marijuana establishments. The first is section 401, which I can pull up if you want, but really what it does is it gives municipalities the authority to regulate marijuana establishments. And then we have section 402, which, and I'm going to read this for you, and I might as well just pull it up so there's no confusion. I'm going to pull it up just a second. All right, can everybody see this?
Yes.
So this is about requests for local authorization of marijuana establishments. And what it reads is, a person seeking to operate a marijuana establishment within a municipality may not request local authorization to operate the marijuana establishment pursuant to subsection 3, and a municipality may not accept as complete the person's request for local authorization unless. And then we move to paragraph A, and this is really the piece I wanted everyone to see. Unless the legislative body of the municipality has voted to adopt a new ordinance, amend an existing ordinance, or approve a warrant article allowing some or all types of marijuana establishments within the municipality, including the type of marijuana establishment the person seeks to operate. So not only do municipalities have the authority to regulate marijuana establishments, but a person can't even request local authorization until a municipality adopted an ordinance essentially opting in. So that is what I wanted the committee to see. And the reason I wanted you to see this particular language is because the way we define marijuana establishment in Title 28B basically includes all the different license types that a person could get under the program. So one simple way, if you were to take this proposed, if you were to take this bill and bring it into the under like the current local authorization scheme, one very simple way to do it would be to include the operation of these permits in the definition of marijuana establishment. And that would, as I mentioned before, kind of belt and suspenders it if you really wanted to make sure that both the municipal legislative body had approval to allow these, and then also that there wouldn't be approval for events where a municipality has opted out. So that's what I wanted the committee to see. I hope I didn't create more confusion. Please let me know and I can answer your questions.
Thank you, Sam. I don't think you've confused us. I think we needed to see what the local authorization looked like, period, for municipality. And now we see. Representative Corey, followed by Representative Doloff, then Representative Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, it's funny with all of that, I look at that and I still don't know where I'm at on this bill, but you know, we haven't heard from the county fairs on this. I've gone back and I've checked, you know, the testimony on this, and I certainly don't believe somebody has to, you know, testify or not. And I imagine that, you know, there's even going to be, you know, some discretion with them. So I can't imagine that a family fair, you know, as Representative Kinney was talking about, that wants to come across as being, you know, sort of like wholesome for kids of all ages, is probably ever going to, you know, approve having, you know, recreational marijuana booths, you know, at their fairs themselves. And this certainly isn't something that we should force on their businesses. This is a business model, right? Like, you know, they do certain things like bring in, you know, different acts, bring in different vendors, bring in different, you know, midways and everything else to, you know, enhance, you know, their ability to attract the public to their fairs. You know, and on the same thing is that, you know, even if we were talking about trade shows, as Representative or Senator Hickman was saying, and everything, you know, these people would still then have to go, you know, to the municipal, you know, government, you know, where they are, and they would probably have to say, hey, we would really like to do this thing since we haven't, you know, opted into this. And I imagine that probably something that's even crazier is that, you know, this isn't really, you know, a storefront or anything else. I imagine this would take another piece of municipal authorization, right? So even if a municipality has authorized for, you know, a storefront, or, you know, they can authorize several things, testing facilities and everything, they would still have to probably authorize this type of use. I don't think that we could just put this type of use under, you know, the storefront authorization. I think we'd have to create a wholly different authorization for this. Anyways, I'm against sort of having smoking products. I'm against people, you know, having to, or I'm against, you know, turning these into social clubs, you know, essentially, you know, at county fairs. But I'm not against, you know, a consenting, you know, county fair and a consenting municipal government from doing this type of a thing. I still think there's a lot of, you know, discussion, you know, surrounding this, and I'll wait to hear from somebody else, but I imagine I'm going to make a tabling motion on this.
Representative Doloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in favor of the motion that's on the table now. I just think the timing of this bill isn't good. I mean, we've been working on regulating marijuana, adult use marijuana. It's basically, now where it's legal is new. And I don't see, I mean, I don't want to see smoking paraphernalia. I don't want to see buds being sold. I don't, even at a farmer's market. I just, and maybe a few years down the road, once we get our feet underneath us with all this marijuana laws and figuring things out, maybe this will be fine. But I just feel the timing of this bill is wrong at this point. Thank you, Mr.
Representative Kinney. And before you speak, Representative Kinney, I wanted to see if there's anyone from the industry in the attendee list who would be willing to provide information to the committee about how this law, if passed, could be useful to your business. And if no one raises their hand, then we will get that information in a different way. But I just wanted to see if anybody would do that. So Representative Kinney, please go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've raised some very interesting concerns with this bill. And I think we've come up with some interesting ways of putting those concerns to rest. And I think it's going to take a bit of time to get language just right, but I don't think it's going to take too much time. I think we could do something with this session. I am concerned that the sponsor was unable to be here. She had an appointment this morning. I was checking in with her. And so I would like to have her weigh in on some of the things that we have brought up for our concerns, the camera requirements, the public safety, making sure the privacy of those that are around. The idea of, I believe in her testimony, she was okay with the idea of no smoking products and keeping it. She mentioned tinctures and sobs and things like that. I'm not sure she was, I'm not sure even if she was okay with the idea of even limiting and not allowing edibles. And maybe that's where we start so that we can see how it goes. You know, and I'm not saying that that's what I would put in to limit to exclude edibles, but I'm trying to come up with a way that we can do something. We have adopted to allow for alcohol, and a lot of what I do with this, with adult use marijuana for myself, is I'm trying to equate it to alcohol. I have an occasional drink myself. I have no interest in adult use marijuana. I'm okay with medical marijuana. So I'm trying to figure out a way that works. And our state was divided pretty evenly. It did pass, and we had a long discussion on this the other day about the bill. The referendum passed. It is now law, and we have the responsibility to make sure that provisions are in place to protect the public, just as we do with alcohol. So at this time, I think we need a little bit more time. Like I said, I don't think we need a lot more time, but I'd like to, and I'd be willing to do it. I'd be willing to work with Sam and try to come up with a new amendment that addresses a lot of the concerns we've had today, and come back to this next week and make sure that the sponsor could be here to hear those concerns. And I'd work with Sam and the sponsor. So I'd like to make a motion to table.
Thank you, Representative Kinney. You debated the motion before you made it. So I will just say that I agree with you in this way. The industry is asking, this legal industry is asking for a way to expand its market because it has products piling up and some of the businesses are not able to survive without opportunities to expand to new markets, so long as the mission of the department, as the director has stated, can be met. And so I can't allow the tabling motion from you, Representative Kinney. I just wanted to respond to what you said to say,
yeah, that was my mistake, sorry.
we don't have to vote this out today. And so I will Representative Corey has his hand raised.
I'll make a motion to table.
And I'll second.
It's been moved to table. It's been seconded. There's a non-debatable motion. Karen, if you are ready, please call the roll.
Senator Hickman.
Yay.
Senator Hickman, yay. Senator Meermont.
No.
Senator Meermont, no. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCrate.
Yes.
Representative McCrate, yes. Representative Riley. Representative Riley, absent. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington. Representative Harrington, absent. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolph.
Yes.
Representative Dolph, yes. 9 having voted in favor of the motion, 1 member voting against the motion, and 2 members absent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Karen. 9 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion prevails. The bill is tabled. I will close the work session on LD 1927. We will switch analysts. Thank you very much for your work today, Sam. Welcome, Janet. I will open the work session on LD 1906, an act regarding rulemaking and pricing under the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations. Karen, please update us on where we are with LD 1906.
I will do that
Yours.
for her.
I said, Karen. Janet, please update us on where we are with LD 1906.
Sure. This time I remembered to check for pending motions. You may be happy to know. So at the work session last time, which was the first work session, I summarized for you the substance of the stakeholders' proposed amendment that was prepared for this bill and that was presented at the public hearing. And there was a discussion that the stakeholders would like a little bit more time to answer some of the questions raised in the bill analysis about that I had actually posted the committee about where you wanted to go and what the goals were and maybe helping shape what you would like to do based on an identification of those goals. And the stakeholders have met again, and I worked with them at the direction of Senator Hickman, who was one of the stakeholders, to prepare a different amendment that is ready for you. And I didn't mention it, but there aren't any pending motions, or maybe I did, and I'm just repeating myself.
And if you could share, please, the new amendment on the screen.
Certainly. So this amendment would replace the bill and the proposed amendment. So it just tries to show you everything that's going to be in the bill if you were to pass it as amended. So section 1 is the same as section 1 of the bill and the first proposed amendment, and it provides that the Bureau's rules regarding the registration of labels for malt liquor, wine, and low alcohol spirits products, those would become major substantive rules. So that's the same, it hasn't changed. Section 2 of this proposed amendment is substantially different from the proposal you saw before. So the proposal you saw before would change spirits pricing rules. It was a little oddly drafted, but I think it meant originally spirits retail pricing rules. It would have changed those to major substantive rules and required certain things to be considered within the rules. The stakeholders, after meeting, proposed differently just to include the piece that they had proposed about an appeals process or some way for the stakeholders to provide input into the establishment of the retail price of spirits. So what this provision does is it's in a new section of law so that we don't need to worry about any conflicts with the Title 28A errors bill. It's creating a new section of law, so it won't make a conflict. And what it provides is that when the commission sets the retail price of spirits, it has to follow its requirements under current law, which is to take care of the state spirits tax and to make sure that the revenues returned to the state as required by that provision of law. and it's going to consider the recommendations submitted by the Bureau. All that's current. But then what happens is that the director would then notify the spirit supplier who supplies that product to the state of the decision about the retail price, and let the spirit supplier know that they have an opportunity to request reconsideration of that price determination at an adjudicatory hearing, which is a phrase used in the Administrative Procedures Act. That the commission would conduct an adjudicatory hearing is a chance for the spirit supplier to present their information and their arguments for why maybe the price should be different. And then also the Bureau could present its details of how the pricing calculator or other tools that they may use, or the rules under which they're making recommendations, how they derived the price that they had recommended. And then the commission would have an opportunity to reconsider its decision and decide what the retail price would be. And then, just as in current law, that decision, only now there's been a reconsideration opportunity, but that decision would be a final agency action. There's still the avenue of the courts to pursue further appeals if the spirit supplier is not satisfied with the retail price determination. And so this also directs the Bureau to establish some rules to define how that process would work. For example, how long is it that the spirit supplier has after receiving notice of the price before it requests a hearing, et cetera, and so forth. And it specifies who has the opportunity for the hearing, and the stakeholders. And then Senator Hickman now proposed that it just be the person who's selling this product to the state. It wouldn't be a person off the street who says, for example, I would like to buy that product for $1 instead of $35, so please lower the price. So that wouldn't be the type of appeal we're talking about. The next provision in this proposed amendment gets to the reporting piece of sales. That was in the bill and in the amendment at the hearing in a slightly different format. It was in a section of law that I thought was a little bit confusing, because I don't know if you remember, but there was a while ago that OPEGA looked at some of the reporting requirements by the Bureau and thought that all the requirements should be added to one section. So there's one place you could go to look for what all the requirements are in the annual report. And I suggested moving this reporting requirement to that section of law, because we're talking about information that needs to be reported. But it still has the same structure that you saw last time. So the idea would be that unless the Bureau is already reporting to the TTB, that's the federal agency, data on on-premise and off-premises sales as specified here, then it would have to include that data in the report that's submitted to the legislature, and that would be to this committee. And the data are 3 different points. One is the total of all retail sales of liquor for on-premises and off-premises consumption combined. And the other 2 data points are, one, on-premises consumption retail sales combined across all retailers and types of liquor, and the other one would be the off-premises equivalent. So that is already required in the bill, but it was just slightly rewritten here. The next piece, if you remember, there was a provision of the proposed amendment that would involve the paperwork requirements for wholesale licensees. So this is not about spirits, this is about wine and malt liquor. And right now there are some triplicate purchase order form requirements, and then there's a quintuplicate, I'm saying that wrong, quintuplicate, that's this word here. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, you can read it. Purchase order form requirement if you're not bonded for your payment of excise taxes. And this restructures both of those provisions. So the quintuplicate requirement is in 1404, the triplicate requirement is in, it should be 1405. I'll fix that if you vote for it. And it provides instead that the wholesale licensee is going to fill out the purchase order form and send it to the Bureau. The Bureau will process it, and they can submit copies to other people and retain copies themselves, but they don't have to fill out 3 paper copies and mail them physically to all different locations. And then the only other difference from the proposed amendment is that there were some proposals in 1643 for fixing this paragraph C, including getting rid of that gendered pronoun and some of the listing of a certificate of approval holder instead of listing out brewery, winery, or foreign wholesaler, because those are our certificate of approval holders. So some cleanup language like that, but it's not substantively different than the proposal you had before you. It just incorporates the 1643 changes to that paragraph. And then the final part of this proposed amendment replaces the provision that had been in the proposed amendment that talked about this committee reviewing all of the rules for labeling and for pricing of spirits, and then perhaps doing something with that information, like reporting out a bill to direct the department maybe to change their rules or something like that. Instead, this was how the stakeholders wanted to address the ideas about the pricing formula, which isn't actually in rules. So it's going to require, if you vote for it, that no later than January 15th next year, the Bureau would have to submit a report to this committee that explains the process by which the State Liquor and Lottery Commission establishes the retail price, the process by which the Bureau recommends a retail price for the commission to consider. It would explain how any pricing formula or calculator that it uses operates. It would explain what factors are considered in that formula and why did the Bureau choose to incorporate those factors. It would also allow the committee to have an update on the status of the appeals rules. So because they're routine technical rules, they would tell you, yes, we've adopted them, or no, we haven't. Maybe we got 60 comments that required us to start over, and they would just give you an update on where those appeals process rules were. And then you, as a committee, would have authority to report out legislation. And I put this any session of the 131st legislature because a couple of committees were caught off guard this first regular session of this legislature when you adjourned quickly and then immediately started a first special session, because a lot of things were written to only allow authority to report a bill out in the first regular session. And it ended so quickly that everybody then needed joint orders. So it just seemed better to put any session and then you'd be covered. So that's what the proposed amendment does.
Thank you, Janet. Are there any questions for Janet at this point? Chairman Piazza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Janet, you mentioned stakeholders. Do you have a list of which stakeholders were involved in this?
Sure. So at the most recent call of the stakeholders after the last work session, well, let me clarify. At the last work session, we went through all of the different ideas of how to approach the issues that have been raised in the proposed amendment, all the factors. I know the stakeholders had discussions amongst themselves. I do not know who those people were. I can only tell you who I spoke with once they came to me with Senator Hickman and said, this is how we'd like the amendment to look. And that was Senator Hickman, a representative from Discus, so Andy Hackman, and then several representatives from Sazerac, and then Jerry Reed, the former Bablo director. At the first stakeholder call, so I believe these individuals were also part of the stakeholder group, there was Peter Gore from the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm talking about the first stakeholder call that I was involved in. And then I was directed by the people I was on the call with to reach out to Cheryl Timberlake about the wholesale licensee paperwork requirement. And she and I conferred on that.
Thank you.
And I can also add that some of the other stakeholders that were involved in the process for the Brewers Guild, Kate Knox attended a few meetings, Senator Daughtry attended a meeting, and I might be forgetting someone, but I have invited right now Elizabeth Wise into our meeting because I want to ask her to introduce herself, who she represents, and speak to the importance of Section 2, which is the retail price appeal process, Section 3, which is the requirements for the different aggregate retail sales of liquor for on and off-premise consumption, and Section 6, the report about the way in which the Bureau calculates price and recommends that price to the Commission for consideration. So Elizabeth Wise, thank you for being here today. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. Elizabeth Wise. I run the Government Relations Department for Sazerac. And hopefully I'll be brief because I feel passionate about all three of these items. The first item is just merely a request for an appeal process. Right now, we can go as far as suing our regulator, which is something we absolutely don't want to ever have to do. This would give us a third kind of bite at the apple, in the sense we'd have the Bureau, then we'd have the commissioners, and then we would have this appeals process that, as I understand it, is afforded to almost everybody else in the state in a similar situation as ourselves. And what we would like to do is just really comply with, I can't remember what it's called, the Maine Administrative Procedures Act. So it's not like we're trying to institute anything new. It's something that already exists and will give us some more formality, a little more structure. If we had some pricing concerns, we would like to be able to take it to that sort of body. Should I go to the next one, or do you have a question for me on that?
I was going to ask if anyone has any questions for Ms. Wise around the importance of an appeals process for retail pricing. Seeing none, please continue to the importance of what information of the consensus stakeholder group proposed for reporting, section 3.
Section 3. So section 3 is something, because we operate in all control states. So we're in all 17 control states. And this is information that is easily accessible to all distillers, all suppliers, with the exception of 4 states, and Maine is one of them. So we would love it if we could be able to see on-premise, off-premise. It would be blinded. I think that's in the regulation. So no, it's not like we're looking into anyone's serious information. We're just getting more information so we can determine sales, how to be a better customer, all those sorts of things. And it doesn't seem like it's that unusual since so many other states have it in their system that we can look at on-premise and off-premise data.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee about that? Chairman Piazza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Wise, for joining us this morning. 2 questions. What other states do not allow you to have access to their pricing formulas?
I can't tell you that. I want to say West Virginia is one of them, and I don't know the other 2, but I'm sure I could find that by the end of the call for you.
Okay. Second question. You said you need this to determine your sales. Do you not get sales reporting documentation or information from the state?
We do. That I didn't mean to misspeak. I believe we have very good data as far as off-premise is concerned. And what we're trying to do is get similar data for on-premise. And we don't have that right now. And I believe it's all aggregate. It's not all divided up.
And why is that information critical?
So I think it's more than anything just to be able to, we rely a lot on, you look back, you figure out how things worked last year, how well things could work better next year, those sorts of things. It's more about maybe marketing, thinking about what products are working, what we wouldn't offer anymore, those sorts of things, those sorts of decisions that are data driven.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the reporting proposal in this amendment? Seeing none. And then I believe I have this right, that section 6, the report back about the pricing is also very important to your industry. Can you please explain why this report?
So the state of Maine is the only state that has a pricing calculator that's set up in this manner with the entry points in a sense, or the categories that are set up this way. So as we were looking at this bill, there was a lot of folks who said, we don't understand the pricing, it's not transparent, all those sorts of things. And I think the Bureau would say it is transparent. So this is just an opportunity for them to tell the public, tell you all, tell us what goes into choosing those particular factors that go into Maine's calculator. It's different than other states. So to us, it would just be interesting to figure out why they chose those particular reasons that you put your price in a sense into that calculator in Maine.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Wise about the calculator? Chairman Piazza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Wise. So I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. You know what your wholesale price is to the state because that's what your sell point is for you. You know what the retail price is because you can see that in the market. Why can't you do the math and just adjust what that difference is? Are you suggesting that there are different calculations based on different criteria for the same products?
So it's not just a question of price, it's the question of how they determine, let's just call it categories, if you will, or types. I'm not sure exactly what the right term is, but there are things in this state, such as value, premium, types like that, that some states don't look at. So some states might just look at vodka and bourbon or those sorts of categories. But this state has decided to look at value products as well as premium products and assign different, I'll just use the word value again, values to those sorts of categories. And we would just be interested in what the thinking is behind that.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
May I proceed?
Thank you. So does your organization, your company offer different tiers of products? Do you offer for lack of a better word, what we call I know it's not correct terminology, but a well product versus
Yes,
a
we're
pure
in,
product?
we're in every tier.
Okay, and how do you differentiate those tiers?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if it's based on price or just you just kind of know. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Is it volume of sale?
No, that would not be how it was determined.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Wise regarding these points? Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask Director Minio to join us and provide some clarity, if he will, on the pricing calculator.
I'm getting there.
Director
Sorry.
Minio.
Good morning.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Good morning. Please introduce
Good morning.
yourself.
Greg Minio, Director of the Bureau.
Thank you for being here. So the other day, when we were discussing a different bill and the pricing calculator came up, you made it clear that it's the Bureau's pricing calculator that is what needs to be referred to when it comes to the price of spirits. And so I guess I would ask, in section 6 of this proposed amendment, if these are things that you could tell us in the future, or could you outline them for us now? I will leave that up to you.
We'd be happy to outline it now.
Okay.
Ms. Willett, Tracy Willett, who I believe spoke on the previous session, would be certainly able to clearly explain the pricing calculator. Before we do that, can I just say one thing though? The pricing calculator is not a mystery to anybody.
It's not a what?
A mystery to anybody. It is public and transparent, and every supplier knows about it and has worked with it and weighs in on it every time there is a newly listed item or a potential price change. There is no mystery. We have never heard from one supplier who has said to us they don't understand the pricing calculator. Not one, including the company Ms. Wise represents.
So you're saying that one of the bill sponsors of this bill, who doesn't have any idea how the products that sponsor's business sells is priced, has never told you that?
Correct.
Okay.
And by the way, we work with the commercial team, the regional team. They have not ever once said to us they don't understand the pricing calculator. That's what Tracy Willett's office does. She works with the representatives of all companies, all suppliers. We work with over 85 suppliers. They work with her every single day, every week, whenever there's anything that has to do with pricing. So we don't understand why there's this mystery on the pricing calculator.
Okay. I'm going to allow Ms. Wise to respond since you call her out by name. Ms. Wise?
Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse. We are not confused about how putting the price in and how it comes out the other end, those sorts of things. I was just saying, when we were developing this bill, we started talking to various co-sponsors and other people, and some of them said, yeah, how does all that happen? So I would say, no, not us in the industry are confused. So I apologize for the misunderstanding. I was just saying other folks outside of our industry were confused.
Thank you for that clarity. So you do not need this resolved. It's part of the statute because you are able to tell us today all of the things that you consider when you set a price for the different value areas. That's what Tracy is going to be prepared to tell us.
Yes, sir, Senator, and she'd be happy to share the document. I don't know whether Janet, did you, I'm sorry, I'm remiss. I don't know whether you received the document from us on that. Tracy, if you're listening, can you please email Janet the document that we've all shared internally and that the industry sees? And that is the guidelines moving forward. If you can do that, please. And then once you get that, Janet, then you can share the appropriate page to the document.
I would say thank you. And until that happens, I'm going to ask Chairman Piazza to ask a question or make a comment.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick question for the director first.
Yes, sir.
If I could, please. Director Minia, your name was not mentioned as a stakeholder in this. Has the department had any input at all in the formation of the amendment or the initial proposal?
None.
Okay. So at that point, I'd like to make a motion. If I could, please, I'm going to move ought not to pass. Excuse me. I will move ought to pass as amended with a recommendation for a study to explore the appeals process in terms of pricing, liquor pricing, to be determined. I do not have a structure in place for that yet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So the discussion on the motion will be, I think that.
If I could clarify, Senator,
Yes.
Janet, for your purposes, I'm striking everything else out of the bill, and it's going to be replaced with a resolve asking for that study. To keep it simple. Thank you.
So Director, it seems like the question that we have for you and for Tracy, and when we have the document that you've sent, is the policies, the considerations for each level of the formula where you set the price. That is the question that the people who have been coming together to ask about would like to know. So is that something that you are also prepared to talk about today with us?
It's all in the document that I hope Tracy has sent to Janet. And yeah, I'd like to know a lot more about the people that are asking these questions, but I'll reserve comment on that. Janet, have you received the document from Tracy? You have not.
I moved to table.
Second.
Okay, I did just get it, but
She got it.
Thank you. We'll move to table, and it's been seconded. Karen, would you please call the roll?
Senator Hickman.
Yay.
Senator Hickman, yay. Senator Mearmont.
No.
Senator Mearmont, no. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCrate.
Yes.
Representative McCrate, yes. Representative Riley. Representative Riley, absent. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
What was the motion?
To table.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington. Representative Harrington, absent. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolph. Representative Dolph, absent. 8 members having voted in favor of the motion, 1 voting against the motion, and 3 members absent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The motion prevails. The bill is tabled. I will close the work session on LD 1906, and I request a caucus. We will return at 11 a.m. It will give us an opportunity to take a break as well. So 11 a.m. is when we will return. Thank you all very much. See you shortly.
Yeah, and I'm, well, let me make sure.
As people return, if you could turn your cameras back on so that we can continue with our agenda for the day. We have one more work session and 2 amendment reviews. And I do know that we need to be complete with our work around 1 o'clock, 2 at the latest, but we are going to shoot for having a complete day for 1 p.m. So as folks return, just please turn on your camera so we can continue our work to make sure that we have a quorum in case we need to take a vote. 1, 2, 3. And Janet, just so that I can reset myself, we tabled 1906, and so we will be shortly opening the work session on the long bill.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I am going to open the work session on LD 1643, an act to correct errors, inconsistencies, and conflicts in and to revise the state's liquor laws. Janet, please update us onto where we are.
Certainly. At the last work session, we went through all of the technical issues at the end of the bill analysis. And you asked, the committee, asked for the Bureau to weigh in on all of those technical issues, whether they were in agreement on them. And there were 3 where they requested more time to think about it and to discuss with me what it was I was suggesting was a technical issue. And so you directed us to do that. And we have discussed them. I can tell you which ones they are and what the outcomes are of those discussions, if you would like.
That would be great. I think that what we can probably do is there was a suggestion earlier in this process that we would sort of take straw polls to move certain things into the bill that we agreed on and leave out the things that were controversial. And so I think it might be a good idea for us to do some straw poll votes on these technical issues that would be added to the bill. So please show us where we are, Janet, and we'll go from there.
Sorry, writing that down. It's hard to take notes and do this at the same time.
I'm sorry. It'll be an informal vote, but it might even be just by a group, but we'll see what the committee's will is when we get to that point.
Okay, so all of the technical issues that start on page 15, all of those were things that everybody who you asked last time was fine with, except if you go on to page 16, this item number 14. This is about cross-references. So I want to be clear that there's a provision of the bill that is substantive in nature. It's noted in the chart by being highlighted. And what that provision of the bill does is it provides within the main manufacturing statute that when that main manufacturer gets its chapter 43 license, which is your license for on-premises sale, and they're allowed to, as a manufacturer, apply for and get that license, but it doesn't have to be directly at their facility. And so if that licensed location is away from the facility, what the bill does is it adds clear new authority, which I believe is a substantive change according to the subcommittee meetings, which would say that that manufacturer can transport its products to that facility for sale. So ordinarily, as you know, with the 3-tier system, transportation and movement of product is usually something done by the wholesaler tier. That's why we were talking about all the wine and everything else with the other bills. And so there are only certain instances that are very specific in the main manufacturer statute that talk about when you can transport your products. And this was something that the subcommittee agreed was worth adding as a clear authority. When I looked at that in the bill, when it was printed this time and I was re-looking at it, I realized that if you're a distillery, there's this separate provision which is written so that you can invoke, sorry, my phone's ringing. I don't know how to make it quiet. There's this separate provision in the law that talks about the authority of a distillery specifically to move products, and that's in there so you can talk about when they use their special discount rate. And it just doesn't have a cross-reference to this new authority to move your products to the Chapter 43 location. So when I spoke to the Bureau about that, they agreed that that cross-reference would be clear. In fact, they were very focused on making everything as clear as possible. They thought that would be helpful to everyone, and they agreed, which I can't really disagree with, even with this rewrite, that it's really hard to go through. The main manufacturer statute, that's section 1355A of Title 28A. It's like 14 pages long. It's a really long statute. So they said the more clarity you can add, the better. So they agreed to this item number 14, adding that cross-reference, and they actually even suggested an additional cross-reference because under the bill specifies, newly clarifies that if you are a manufacturer and you have this Chapter 43 license location, which could be, for example, a restaurant, that you need to, and because you're a manufacturer, you can also make off-premises sales there. They wanted it to be very clear that all of the sales that are part of your Chapter 43 license are separately accounted for than all of your sales under your off-premises selling authority. That's because you're a manufacturer. And it's important to make all of those record-keeping requirements separate because there are food sales requirements. We've talked about them last year if you have certain on-premises retail locations. And if you include all of your off-premises sales, then it's going to affect whether you meet that food requirement. So it's very important to separate out, are you selling under your on-premises license or are you selling because you're a manufacturer? And you need to make that all very clear. So they suggested adding another cross-reference. It doesn't change the law, but just to try and be very clear about what you're doing when. So they did agree with 14, and they just wanted to add another cross-reference to make it clear that when you are selling something for off-premises sale at that Chapter 43 location, it's because you're a manufacturer. Ordinarily, on-premises restaurants don't sell for off-premises consumption. So they just want to be clear that you separate your records. So that was the proposal for number 14. Number 17, I had posed a question about there are excise taxes imposed on malt liquor, wine, and low alcohol spirits products. We're not talking about spirits here because we're a control state. So the way we talk about that tax, we don't use the phrase excise tax. So we're just talking here about excise tax on malt liquor, wine, and low alcohol spirits products. There's a provision in that. It's subsection 4. This is item number 17 again, sorry. And it talks about when you credit the wholesale licensee back for certain excise taxes that the state and the wholesale licensee thought were due, but it turns out there's a defective product or something like that. So or the product was destroyed. So they shouldn't necessarily owe excise taxes on it. And the question I had was, if you look at that statute, even though this excise tax is imposed on all 3 types, malt liquor, wine, and low alcohol spirits, all the credits only refer to malt liquor and wine. The credits don't refer to low alcohol spirits products. And so the Bureau looked at that and said, yes, the credits do apply to low alcohol spirits products. It's worth clarifying that in the statute. They just wanted to make sure at the last work session. So they agreed to that. And item 18 was the only thing a little bit more substantive in nature. As you may recall, we talked about this many times in other bill contexts, and just generally the committee has talked about that low alcohol spirits products, while they're recognized in the law, there's a lot of lack of clarity in the current law about who does what with respect to them. And one of the things that's not clear is if you're a person from Maine, or even not from Maine, and you're out of state and you're driving into Maine, how much low alcohol spirits products can you bring into Maine? There are rules about how much wine you can bring in for personal use and malt liquor, but there was no clarity around low alcohol spirits products. So I just inquired whether that was something that should be clarified. And the Bureau looked at that, and they did agree that the amounts should be the same that apply to wine and spirits under the bill. So I did put together for you amendment language to show you if you agreed with that proposal. what it would look like. So there are provisions of the bill that talk about the importation of malt liquor and wine, and you would just add low alcohol spirits products to that. And the key point here is an individual can transport into the state 400 fluid ounces of malt liquor and 4 liters of wine, and you would just make it mirror it would be 4 liters of low alcohol spirits products. If you look at the provision of the bill about spirits, it's again 4 liters. So it would just match. And if you go through, there are penalties if you exceed that amount, and everything is going to be made to mirror low alcohol spirits products to wine. The Bureau actually recommended mirroring spirits, but that mirrors wine. So it's easier to see here that it mirrors wine if you look at the language in front of you. So that's the proposal there, is to clarify when you're allowed to import low alcohol spirits products into the state, because it's not specified in current law, which is why when the subcommittee reorganized current importation and transportation laws, it didn't add low alcohol spirits because it was just reorganizing the laws. And this is a new addition because the current law doesn't address it. Hopefully that makes sense. So those are all of the technical issues now, the Bureau's input on them.
And those are not considered substantive, or at least controversial. How's that for a word?
I would say that the low alcohol spirits product one is substantive, which is why I thought you'd definitely want to see language on it.
Yes.
It's not that the Bureau on its own said, we want to make the substantive change to the law. They were reacting to my question.
Right.
Maybe they do want to make that substantive change to the law. No, but I just don't want to characterize that for them. They were reacting to the question I asked.
Okay, great. Can you put the language of, well, first of all, do committee members have any questions on so far on the technical issues with this long errors and inconsistencies bill? And so I would like, please, for you to put up the language on low alcohol spirits that I think we've all received, and then I will ask the director to just explain to us how this works and why it's necessary. Director Minio, yes, you are here.
Yes.
So if you could please walk us through this, sir, that would be great.
Okay, I'm happy to, if I may, since I was not in the meeting yesterday. If it pleases the senator and the chairs, may I ask Mr. Sanborn or Mr. Poulin to comment on this, since it's fresher in their mind? Is that okay?
Okay, that is fine. Let me invite
Sanborn and Poulin, please.
them here. Give me 1 second to find my participant screen.
It was Mr. Sanborn I worked with on this one.
Okay, then Mr. Sanborn, please. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Let me.
I'll clam up.
There he is. Most panelists. Mr. Sanborn is probably coming through the wormhole as we speak. I see him as a panelist. Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, Mr. Sanborn. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Larry Sanborn. I'm the Division Director for Liquor Licensing and Enforcement inside of the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages Lottery Operations.
Thank you. Please explain this amendment to us and why it's necessary, sir.
Low alcohol spirits wasn't contemplated in the importation. We had beer, wine, and spirits are contemplated, and low alcohol is a separate classification unique to itself. This does add your ability to have more product imported into the state. It used to be 400 ounces of malt liquor, 4 liters of wine, and 4 liters of spirits. To that conglomerate, we're going to add 4 additional liters of low alcohol spirits. So there are plenty of opportunities, but it wasn't defined, it wasn't clarified.
Okay, And now it is. Does anyone have any questions about this section of law that is being amended? Seeing none. So I guess what I will ask, if Janet, you could just put back on this, and thank you, Mr. Sanborn, for that explanation.
Thank you.
If you could put just one more time on the screen, all of the technical issues that have been clarified, resolved, I guess I'll use the word resolved, in the bill analysis. If the committee is paying attention, we are in section B. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and up to 18, is it?
Correct.
So my question to the committee is, we had spoken a week or so ago about moving this bill might be one of the last things we vote out, but along the way, we might find consensus on some of the additions to the bill that we could take straw poll votes on. So with that in mind, I would entertain a motion, if the committee is ready, to move into the final amendment for LD 1643, items 5 through 18 from the other suggested technical amendments in the bill analysis. Representative McQuaid.
Sorry, can I just ask what page of the bill we're on? Ask Janet.
Certainly. So this is a list that is scattered throughout the bill. So if you
Oh,
look
okay.
at the bill analysis, which should be in blue in your binder, it's on page 15.
Okay, great, thank you.
And each item tells you what page to look at in the bill or the binder if it's not actually in the bill yet.
Okay, thank you. And if I could go ahead and make a motion to accept by straw poll, is that the right motion?
Yes.
The items just referenced.
So items 5 through 18 would be moved into a final amendment on LD 1643. Is there a second to Representative?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So the question before the committee is, will we move into the final amendment for LD 1643, items 5 through 18 on page 15 and 16 of the blue analysis sheet, where all of the questions have been answered? You can please indicate, and Janet, can you please stop sharing your screen, if you don't mind? Thank you so much. And if all members could turn on their cameras, we'll just take this straw poll by show of hands. All in favor of moving these into the final bill? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I see 9, Janet. Keep your hand up, please, everyone. Thank you. 9 members, all present and voting, agree. So we will move these into the final amendment. And Janet, can you now just walk us through any substantive changes and amendments that have been proposed, newly proposed, and where we are on those?
Certainly, if you have your bill analysis in front of you, there were some questions about fruit beers and then questions about the definition structure for brewery and small brewery that were raised by the Maine Brewers Guild. Yep. And I was directed to speak with them along with representatives from the Bureau and to discuss whether there could be some consensus on how to address those issues. And some consensus was reached, and then there's a little bit of an outstanding issue remaining. And I tried to summarize that in a separate document that I can put up on the screen now, but the issues are laid out on page 12, mostly of the bill analysis, but I tried to be clear on this separate document. So hopefully if we just look at that together, that might help.
Okay, let's look at the separate document, and you can show us where there was consensus and where I know that we have folks who in the Brewers Guild and Senator Daltrey who need more time to make sure that we can come to an agreement on certain things. But let's just see if we have consensus on something else we might be able to move in to the total bill today.
Certainly. So the fruit beers issue, just to remind you, there's an issue in current law where if you have a product that contains fermented malt, I'm not the expert, but I'm going to try and summarize it the way I understand it, that contains both fermented malt and fermented fruit of some kind within it, that product technically meets both the definitions of malt liquor and wine under current law. And so that became a problem when people were attempting to register their labels with the Bureau, and it wasn't clear where they were, as the AG looked at the law, should those be registered as wine or malt liquor? And there was a decision in the interim that they would consider them malt liquor. And then the proposal was that we clarify in this bill which they are. And the outcome is supposed to be that they are malt liquor, because as long as malt is included, the idea would be that they would be considered malt liquor. So speaking with the department and the guild, the idea was to mirror federal law, and federal law does provide that something is a malt liquor product if no less than 51% of the total alcohol by volume is derived from the fermentation of malt or a malt substitute. I put a link here to a federal regulation that talks about what counts as a substitute for malt. And if you read that regulation, it includes rice, grain of any kind, bran, glucose, sugar, and molasses. And it is written in a way that sounds like those are the only possible substitutes for malt ever, forever and always, amen. But it's my understanding from speaking to the Bureau and the Brewers Guild that sometimes the TTB approves additional substitutes for malt through circulars, and it may in fact change its regulations in the future. So this is written to say that you're at least 51% of alcohol by volume would derive from malt or a malt substitute. That could be one of those things or anything else that's approved by the TTB sort of in the future or maybe currently to be a substitute for malt. The other part of this definition is to say that no more than 49%, so the remainder of the alcohol by volume would derive from the fermentation of something else, and that something else could include honey or fruit, thus the blueberry beer that Representative Chiazzo has reported he drinks, fruit juice, fruit concentrate, herbs, spices, honey, maple syrup, and other food materials. That list is also directly in this regulation if you wanted to look at where did this language come from. And while this is sort of an including list, so it sounds open-ended, it was important to the Bureau and the Guild that we also say it could be any of these other food materials that's approved by the TTB to be included in these beverages, to just make it clear that I think the idea, although obviously they can speak for themselves, was folks are trying to follow what the TTB requires, and they don't like to be surprised then when they come to the state and find out maybe that's not okay. They want to know that what's okay federally would be okay with the state as well. And the problem was that the definition wasn't clear about that right now. And then this last sentence is what's already in current law with slightly rephrased to make it hopefully a little clearer that if you have added spirits, you're no longer in the malt liquor category. And then to really take care of the problem that presented itself last year, you would clarify in the wine definition that if you have malt liquor, you don't have wine. So there isn't a question that it's both products at the same time.
Thank you. Chairman Chiazzo has a question or a comment or both.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jen, I just have a quick question on the last line that says malt liquor does not include beverages made with malt liquor to which spirits have been added. Is that any spirit, any amount of spirits at all, or is there a limit to how much before it changes definition?
Any at all, because at that point,
Okay.
you're turning into the low alcohol spirits category. If you go up to 8%, and then after that, ask the Bureau, I don't know what it becomes at that point. Maybe really tasty, I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Senator Daughtry if she is willing to turn on her camera and talk to us about her acceptance of this language and why it's important for the industry. Senator Daughtry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to Janet for all of her work on this and for everyone else on both the Guild team and from Babla who was able to meet yesterday. Just to sort of jog everyone's minds, because I know as a fellow legislator, we've been through a lot the past few days and weeks. The reason that this clarification was so crucial for our industry is we came into an issue of needing the clarification that current brewing practice was allowed. It's bigger than the blueberry beer that Chair Chiazzo had, but we have internationally award-winning beers throughout our industry that have fruit that are added in the process. So this is really just a clarification that mirrors federal law. I think the important thing to remind committee members is that this is already allowed under the TTB, and just making it clear that this is something that is allowed in state law additionally. I think the really clear part is the 49% that mirrors what's in federal law as well. Also, the concerns about making sure that the various processes of malt are in there as well. I also have representatives on the legal side of the Brewers Guild. I know that Kate Knox is in attendance, as well as John Moran. So as far as the legalese, which, I am a brewer, I am not a lawyer. So I am happy to detail the importance of, the fruit and the fermentation and when it goes in and how it contributes to the total perceived alcohol. Happy to answer any questions about that. But on the legalese, I definitely sort of defer to Kate Knox and John Moran, who were in the meeting yesterday as well, and can speak to that.
Thank you, Senator Daughtry. Does anyone have any questions for Senator Daughtry? Seeing none, I think the legalese is, Representative McCray.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Daughtry, just repeating back to you, what I'm hearing is this was already fine, but it needed to be clarified so that we didn't have any more problems going forward with people misunderstanding that this was already allowed.
Correct. And I did, I'm sorry, I had the importance of checking my notebook. I do want to make clear the one change that we were interested in here, what's in front of us, is instead of the language approved, to use the word allowed. The concern was not all beers go through the federal formula process. So we didn't want to, if we put the word approved in, we're concerned that that could make folks confused, that it would trigger that federal review. Allowed just says that it's a reference back there. And Representative McCray, to answer your question, there was an instance where folks were questioning whether if fruit was involved, if it was classified as a wine. And so that's how we've come before you. And once again, a reminder, under federal law, a brewery is not allowed to be a winery. So we couldn't have that dual license.
And so Representative McCray, did you have a follow-up? Senator Daughtry, you said that you wanted the word approved or allowed, or I see the word approved twice in the proposed amendment language. Am I missing?
It would be allowed if that's amenable.
Okay, Director Minio or Mr. Sanborn, whoever would like to answer that question for Senator Daughtry. Director Minio?
I'm coming. I'm there.
No problem.
I think this might be a legal matter as far as the terminology is concerned. It might be a little more complicated than what it appears to be, and putting allowed in for approved. I'm sorry, I don't necessarily have an opinion on that at this time.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Sanborn, if he's available, if it pleases the senator, we might want to ask him, but this is the first I'm hearing about that. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's a work session.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That's okay. We don't
right.
have to approve this today, but we're just talking it through. I will ask Mr. Sanborn to turn on his camera and address the question. Approved or allowed, does that make a difference to you? And I will also promote Kate Knox, because the director did mention that this might be a legal issue. And if that is the case, I will ask a lawyer to come and talk to us about it. Director Sanborn, Mr. Sanborn.
So part of the mix on this is FDA regulations on IRC beer, whether it's an approved or an allowed product. When we look to see if an item is permissible, we go to an instrument provided by TTB, the approved ingredients list. I'm not sure after that that we hold any special opinion on allowed or approved.
Okay. I have been Senator Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to get too much in the weeds, but to sort of give the committee members what Mr. Sanborn is referencing is under federal regulations, there's a list of approved ingredients. And then there's also TTB circulars that happen with additional ingredients that are approved, which is exactly, what Mr. Sanborn was referencing. So that's why, our thought of saying allowed fits more with the spirit of referencing back towards those regulations and circulars.
Anyone have any questions so far? I'm going to ask Kate Knox to introduce herself and see if she can provide some more information for us about the difference between approved and allowed and address anything that the two representatives from Babylon have shared as well. Kate Knox, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning, everyone, just barely. Kate Knox, I'm an attorney at Bernstein Shur. I live in Portland, and I'm here representing the Brewers Guild. Thank you to Janet and Larry and Tim and everybody who were on the phone yesterday trying to work out this language. I think as a reminder for the committee that the reason, which may seem a little bit strange, but the reason we are so particular about language in the liquor statutes is because the AG's office has had a long-standing position that anything that is not expressly permitted in the liquor statutes is prohibited. Okay. And so that's why we spend so much time trying to make sure that the terms are correct, because we worry that if it's not crystal clear, the interpretation will be that we can't do it. So we do not mean to do this just to be frustrating. So Director Minio is correct. I think we had this conversation yesterday, but we didn't land on this term allowed. I think as we looked at the language this morning that Janet sent over and looked at approved, the concern was what we started thinking about is what does approved mean from a legal perspective? And usually means some formally adopted sort of administrative procedure, as we talk about a rule or a statute. My understanding, and I defer to Senator Daughtry a little bit on this, and Director Minio, is that there are a lot of ways that the TTB sort of expresses their opinion on allowed ingredients. So it could be regulation, it could be circulars, it could be formal and informal processes. My understanding is that Babylon now looks at all of those processes to kind of determine when they're making a decision about ingredients. And my concern was just that approved might reference the most formal TTB process and wouldn't capture some of the guidance circulars that Babylon is now properly, we would argue, sort of using in that assessment. So that's the thinking behind it. It may not be exactly 100% correct, but that's what we're trying to get at.
Thank you, Kate. Representative McCray, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Knox, just tell me what you mean by circular that's coming from the Bureau.
Oh my gosh, Senator Daughtry might be better at talking about that, but they do issue what they call a circular, which is, I think of it as like a sort of a guidance regulation, sort of here's our updated list, here's what we're thinking about, because as you know from being on this committee, new ingredients are introduced all the time. People are doing new formulas and new ideas. So I think it's their way of kind of keeping up to date on the newest things that come out. And that process, I think, is used well now. And referenced by Babylon, we're just trying to make sure it's captured in this.
Thank you.
I'm being correct. It's sort of like internal rulemaking, I guess, is the best way to talk about it.
Jen, if you would please stop sharing your screen, I would appreciate it at this moment. Thank you very much. That it helps me see whose hands are up a little bit more easily. I did see the director nodding in agreement at some point throughout that. And Senator Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hopefully this is helpful building upon what Kate said to answer Representative McCright's question is, it's not only just like internal rulemaking, but it's sort of keeping up with the modern practices of brewing and as the industry ebbs and flows to make allowances. Because, say you have a dream for a beer that has something that's not on the necessarily approved ingredient list, you can go through formula approval to try to get approval for something that might be a little bit, different, or a, main ingredient that might just be unique here. Or if you're in Wisconsin, something that, might be a regional approach there. And that's sometimes how those circulars can come about. But it's just sort of like an internal rulemaking to reflect current practices and changes.
Thank you for that clarity, everyone. Janet.
I just wanted to point out that this was something I pointed out yesterday, and it wasn't necessarily that the guild was okay with it, but I did want you all to know that the way that this 49% provision reads is it says that you can include flavors, and other non-beverage ingredients for fermentation, and it has a list that includes honey and certain specified things and other food materials, period. That's how the federal law reads, and you could put a period there and it would be an open-end inclusive statement. So under Maine law, all kinds of things would be approved. And then if there was a worry for the industry about whether everything's okay, they could be looking to federal guidance about what's allowed federally to make sure they're not violating any federal law as well. So if there's a worry about exactly which word to use in paragraph B, my recommendation would be, unless the Bureau is really worried, to just leave that whole phrase off, because then nothing in state law is limiting you and you just reference back to federal law. I think it's more the approved versus allowed is maybe more important in paragraph A, which is about substitutes for malt, in which the regulations right now say these are the substitutes for malt, and it doesn't contemplate that other substitutes exist. And it's my understanding from the discussions yesterday, although I could be wrong, so I'm glad the industry is here to tell you the truth, in case I'm wrong, that sometimes, even though the regulation says it's these 5 or 6 things, I didn't count them, sometimes the circulars say, no, it's actually these 8 things. And so they do sometimes approve things that aren't in the list in regulations. So you can absolutely include this language in both. I think it's limiting in B in maybe a way that nobody needs it to be. But in A, I do think it's important to really iron out which word. And if you wanted to say approved by the TTB through regulation or circulars, I could see if that would be fine with the legal review teams here in this office. And it may be fine to just do that. If there's something other than circulars, though, we wouldn't necessarily want to limit it way.
This is why we have Janet. Emilia?
Yes, just conferring with my team. Yeah, we agree. We think it could be removed. We don't think it's necessary. I think it's understood clearly to us. So to Janet's point, removing it maybe makes the most sense. And the other thing, I just want to go back to the circulars from TTB. The team has been using those for quite a while. Maybe it's just bubbled up more recently in talking about some of these really interesting topics that we're all dealing with. But this is something that we do pay attention to very closely. I know Mr. Sanborn's got a very good direct line with the TTB, and there's people there that will take his phone call, which is fantastic. It's not always the case sometimes. So, but I think back to B, I think we're okay if you remove it, Janet, if that's something that pleases the committee.
So does that mean that by the end of this conversation, there will be consensus between the stakeholders and the Bureau about how to phrase A and B?
From the Bureau, yes.
Okay. And from the industry? Senator Daughtry or Kate Knox, I'll ask Kate because I know that she's definitely the one talking about how important the words need to be for explicit permission.
So my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that we would keep in section A, we would say other substitute for malt allowed by the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And then in B, we would just put a period after "and other food materials." Is that correct? Yeah.
And other food materials, period.
Period. Senator Daughtry, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're comfortable with that. I agree with Janet. It's probably, it's more important in A than it really is in B. So that works for us.
Senator Daughtry?
Absolutely agreed. I think having the period after food materials is much more in keeping with, you know, the spirit of how this industry works. And I think, as we said, having an A is much more important. So I would agree.
Thank you. Representative Corey, do you have a question or comment, or was it answered in the last dialogue, or was your hand up by mistake since your camera is off?
My hand up was my mistake.
Okay, great. So Janet, are you all set about how to now draft this consensus provision for an amendment?
So, yep, we're going to change approve to allowed in paragraph A, and paragraph B is going to end up materials and not get into that whole TTB discussion.
Okay, and then the department and the industry are in agreement with the wine definition that is there? Yes. Okay, so I would entertain a motion from the committee on a straw poll to move this into the final amendment on LD 1643 at this time. Representative McCray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd make a motion to move those two sections under what we've just been talking about for the straw poll for a vote.
It's been moved and seconded, and if all the members could, by a show of hand, all in favor of the motion, please indicate. Just leave your hands up until Janet can take the straw poll. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. And I know that there's one other item on here that is not necessarily settled. So we can either, well, since everyone is here, you can just talk to us about, well, no, let's not do that. If it's not settled, we will let you go back and settle it unless there's something else on here that is settled that I'm missing, Janet.
There's a piece of this brewery and small brewery definitions that is settled and a piece that is not.
Okay, so which piece
So
is
it depends on what you want to do.
We are in B on page 1, and so on the back of page 1 is page 2. Which part of it is settled?
So this, it's my notes here in blue, I think. Let me read them to make sure. It was a long night. So in the brewery and small brewery definitions, I'm going to back up to what's written on this page. There is a brewery, it's a brewer definition and then a small brewery definition in current law.
Mm-hmm.
The brewer definition is pretty clear. You produce malt liquor by fermentation of malt or substitute for malt. The small brewery definition has a weird sentence with strange grammar about brewing and lagering and kegging, and it's not clear to anybody what that means. And like a silly person, when the subcommittee got together and said we want to streamline these definitions and make them similar, I picked the one with the bad grammar. So that's on me. That was not a good choice, and that reared its ugly head this year. So I'm glad that the Brewers Guild came in and said, you know, that grammar doesn't make sense, because when I look at it, it doesn't make sense. So that's where we were last time.
Mm-hmm.
That you had a work session. The idea was go speak to the Brewers Guild and speak to Babel about how to clarify that definition. Once you start talking about that definition, though, lots of issues come up.
Okay.
And that's what happened. So I'm going to scroll down to show you right now, when you look at the weird grammar for brewery, it would read under the bill, brewery means a person who engages in the activities under paragraph A or B or both, and would have this odd phrase, brewing, lagering, and kegging, bottling, or packaging, which is the ands and the ors, how do they work out?
Mm-hmm.
The person's own malt liquor. And then also they can make low alcohol spirits products, which was another important thing the subcommittee wanted this bill to include.
Yes.
So when you look at this odd grammar, the proposal that I made was to take that grammar out and replaces it with produces the person's own malt liquor. The person's own is already in the bill. once we started talking about this definition, the focus became on the person's own. So that wasn't what we went to talk about. We went to talk about the grammar. I think nobody had a problem with the idea once we really started discussing it of changing this weird language into producing. At first, people were worried, but we talked about it and it sounded like everybody was okay with changing to producing. The problem was this person's own, because right now it's my understanding, again, not being in the industry, that there is some contract brewing going on where somebody has a license as a brewery and some portion of their product is brewed by somebody else under a contract. And so then the person's own sounds like you're limiting it to not allow contract brewing. I don't actually read it as a prohibition, but I get the concern that the guild had, that they didn't want to even suggest there's such a prohibition by putting this phrase in there. So it's in the bill to mirror a different statute. I think it was the definition of wine, but I could be wrong. It might be distillery. I can't remember. But that was a concern. And so then the discussion went on, and you may or may not remember, because similar testimony wasn't submitted this time, but in the 129th, when this bill came up before everything adjourned for the pandemic, Bablo submitted testimony talking about the fact that contract brewing may be occurring. They're not suggesting anybody's doing anything wrong, but it's not clear in the law. There is no clear regulation of contract brewing in the law. It's not really clear how it works under the law. And so they suggested adding some clarification to that. And also, because contract brewing in theory could occur so that you could get a small brewery license and you could contract out all of your brewing. You may not actually brew anything at all, or I think was 5 gallons of wort, but I don't know what a wort is. So other than like a planter's wort. So that didn't really make sense to me, but it's apparently a small amount of something that doesn't make the Bureau happy as perhaps being enough to really be a brewery. So they had raised the idea of, when you look at contract brewing, and should there be a minimum production amount for somebody to be making in order to get all of the benefits or all of the rights of a small brewery license, I think was the issue. And those were the issues they raised last time. The committee didn't take them up on that, said we're going to leave the bill the way it is now, but you're a new committee and you might think maybe we need to address this. So because of that possibility, the Brewers Guild and Bablo discussed it yesterday, and they decided that they would be okay, both parties, and this was nobody had to make this compromise, but they did. I was really like, wow, this is great, to take out the person's own so as not to suggest that contract brewing isn't allowed, but to also maybe add some unallocated language, making it clear that the Bureau should really look into this issue. Nobody's saying that it's not an important issue, and maybe come back to the next legislature and have some proposals about it, because the Bureau was giving up their concern there. And so this was a way to capture that that's a valid concern and something the committee maybe should consider in the future. Hopefully I characterized that correctly. So that was the agreement part of the discussion. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see people if you want me to.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. I see that, let's see, Director Minio, followed by Senator Daughtry, and then I'm going to invite Cheryl Timberlake, whose hand is also raised, to provide some information for the committee's consideration. So if anyone who wants to talk, please just raise your hand. We'll go in order. Director Minio, you first.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Janet, for detailing it and explaining it that way. And again, my apologies to the stakeholders yesterday for me not being on the call. I know we were represented, but I've been thoroughly briefed. We're not in a position at this point to discuss the idea of contract brewing. I know it was brought up. It's something that I think we'd ask the committee to focus more on the minimum production standards, those thresholds, everything that feeds into that. And I personally like the resolve here, if you will, the compromise, directing the Bureau to actually submit a report. Let us talk more about this with the Guild and the other stakeholders. Give us the time to talk about that. Let us learn more and really understand it. We feel like it's a complex issue. We need to know more about it. Allow us to do that. and I'll just offer this up respectfully. I don't know whether it needs to be an unallocated language necessarily. I think we're certainly capable of having these discussions, but I will certainly defer to the chairs in the committee on that.
Thank you, Director. I think the unallocated language is because it's an act and then we're putting a resolve in it. So I think by virtue of how bills are drafted. So thank you for that, Senator Daughtry. And I'm sure Janet will correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chair. I just want to be clear, this is the heart of where we don't have agreement. For example, the person's own we see as a very substantive change, and we're also very uncomfortable with potential unallocated language. And it could potentially completely change the way the industry is now and have grave, grave consequences. Additionally, I just want to be clear that contract brewing and minimum production standards are completely different issues. I agree with the with Mr. Minio, like we look forward to the conversation. We're really happy to, continue these conversations, at the pleasure of the committee, because these are, crucial, issues for everyone. But I just want to be very, very clear from our perspective. It feels like this is not just a grammar fix. This could be potentially opening up a massively substantial change to the way that, the brewing industry has been working and has been doing just fine for, since the 80s. So, as we see it, taking out person's own is crucial and leaving it with producing malt liquor. Make sure that there's no echo effects or ramifications on an industry that's been, making a pretty large impact on our state. So happy to, jump into any of those, but I think the easiest way to just put it is there's definitely need for ongoing conversations on all those different issues, but looking for LD 1643, looking at what's in front of us, I think the best way forward is to slash that, just have producing, and go from there.
Thank you, Senator. So are you saying that as a compromise, the parties agreed to propose removing the person's own from the brewery and small brewery definitions are not what you want to do?
No, sorry if that wasn't clear. We want just producing malt liquor. So we don't want the phrase person's own anywhere in the definition, whether it's brewery or small brewery, because once we're getting that clarification, that's where it could become a prohibition on either contract brewing or other aspects. And instead of just being a simple word clarification, becomes frankly a whole other substance.
Okay. Got it. Kate Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with Senator Daughtry. I think the way Janet has reflected that language, taking out the person's own, it solves that problem. I just want to be very clear that we had discussions. We had discussions about having discussions this summer. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we agreed that there needed to be a bill to fix contract brewing and minimum production. We do not believe those to be problematic. The industry has been doing contract brewing since 1980s. Bablo is certainly welcome, obviously, to put in a bill if they feel like it's problematic, and we would love to participate in the conversation. But I just want to be clear that it feels like agreeing to that is sort of inferring that we agree there's a problem. We don't. I think part of how this, so if we take out the person's own, that makes that definition consistent with wineries, small distilleries. Nobody else says the person's own. I think from my perspective, because I was part of the person who started this problem, was we were trying to I was trying to bring clarity to a concern that I think Ms. Timberlake is going to share with you, that what we did not want to do was impact the small brewery definition for purposes of franchise law, because that, as you all will remember, was a very carefully crafted compromise. Small breweries can distribute their own product, not other people's product. We have no intention of changing that arrangement. It's just that when we tried to put this language in, it created a whole nother problem around contract brewing. So I just want to acknowledge that it was kind of an attempt to get at that. When we looked at the franchise language, I defer to Director Minio and Janet. I think people felt like the term "its" was enough to cover it there. I also defer to Ms. Timberlake. We're not opposed to doing some clarification in the franchise law if we need to do that to keep things the same. But I just wanted to highlight that because we were trying to fix some discomfort from the wholesalers, got down a contract brewing path, which is a very, very different animal. So I think where we are now with just producing malt liquor, it solves the problem. But I did want to lift up that people might have other thoughts about the phrase "its own."
Thank you. Janet, did you want to, I saw your hand go up.
I actually want to say that the person's own is added to the distillery and the winery definitions, since all of them are mirrored in the bill. So we could take them all out throughout the bill. That's up to you. And I did want to address what Kate Knox was talking about the self-distribution provisions to set up what I think Cheryl's going to talk about, why her hand is up. So just to clarify what I understand the issue to be. So if you put the person's own in the definition, which the bill does, there's this worry that it's some kind of prohibition on contract brewing. I don't read it that way, but I can understand why the concern is there. And I think that's why the Bureau agreed, okay, take it out for now. But the worry then is, does that mean because a small brewery can self-distribute to its off-premises locations, that now they're able to distribute all kinds of malt liquor, not just their own? So I did want to point out to you in the bill where this provision is about self-distribution. If you would not mind me sharing my screen, I just called it up. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is page 68 of the bill, and this is part of that huge statute we keep talking about, 1355A, which is the main manufacturer statute. And this is the subsection 3 is all about breweries and small breweries. And it says how much you can produce per year. And then for a small brewery, it says that you can, also here, hopefully, yeah, I just make sure I'm on the right section. It can sell or deliver its products to licensed retailers or wholesalers. It can also sell for off-premise consumption, malt liquor that it produces by the bottle, by the case, or the bulk to licensed retailers. And it may sell its products directly to the retail licensee under this paragraph without selling to a wholesale licensee. So all of this are only about its products. It's not about any other products. That may be not clear enough for everybody, but that is what the law is now about what you can self-distribute. And that is not changed when you change what the definition of a brewery or a small brewery is, to the extent of can a small brewery go to the store, buy its competitors' products and start distributing it to its other locations for off-premises sales. I don't read the law to allow it, but that may not be the only concern. I just want you to know what the current law says on that issue.
So Janet, you were saying by taking a person's own out in this section of law, it could imply something that is not meant to be implied as well. Is that what I heard you say?
No, I think there's some, so this may not be a helpful thing to get into, but definitions don't make substantive law.
Okay.
And it's important to remember. So these definitions of brewery and small brewery tell you who these entities are that are able to apply for a license. And if you make or produce malt liquor, then you're eligible to apply for a brewery license. You're going to have to meet all kinds of requirements. And if you get that license, then all of the things in 1355A tell you what you can or can't do. And then there's other provisions of the statute that also tell you what you can and can't do. And the worry was that if you say producing the person's own malt liquor in the definition, you're somehow saying that you have to only make your own. You can't have contract brewing. Okay. I don't read it that way, but I get that that really worries people. So take it out. Totally makes sense. It doesn't make it impossible to read or understand. It wouldn't cause a new error or inconsistency that this bill is trying to correct. So that makes sense. But if you're worried that changing that definition changes what you can self-distribute, I don't see that. It could be true. So I'm glad you have other people here who can weigh in on that issue, because I think what you can self-distribute is controlled in 1355A, and it's your products that you can self-distribute.
Thank you for that clarity. Cheryl Timberlake, please introduce yourself, and thank you for being patient.
Good afternoon, committee. I am Cheryl Timberlake. I'm the Executive Vice President for Maine Beer and Wine Distributors Association. And thank you for the opportunity. There were a host of conversations and definitions and words, and as people have indicated, words really matter. So for the committee's clarification, not long ago, 2019, the Guild and the distributors sat down and had a very productive conversation about the economic realities of where things are at and what we should do in terms of helping our partnership survive. And we came to a statutory change regarding definitions, and this definition very specifically, and also elements of our franchise law. So when you change a definition, it impacts other sections of statute. It impacts relationships, and it impacts who does what in terms of the services. So it's is a critical component for us because it defines who is making what product. Own says to us exactly what own is versus its. Contract brewing is a component, as Janet and others, I was not part of the conversations that have been happening. I saw the language and red flagged it and said, this is a significant substantive change in terms of the distributor tier and our interests. And I want to appreciate and understand how the definition is going to be changed and what its impact is going to be to the other stakeholders. So its versus own are significant for us. We would ask the committee's indulgence as we talk about what that impact is. If it's changing in one section, it has critical implications in the others. And then contract brewing, if it's not defined, we should define it. It's a practice that's happening. And I'm looking as you're talking to try to understand how that's going to impact all the definitions. But at the moment, we would be significantly concerned if you were to move the words own, given the compromise and what's currently in statute as we dealt with this in LD 1761.
Thank you. We are working this bill, and this was a flag that we're not necessarily ready to move into the bill. So I just want to say that out loud. We're not rushing this particular piece of legislation through this session. Kate Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's helpful to the committee, I think the Guild has no issue leaving in the person's own malt liquor in the small brewery definition. We would just ask that it not be in the brewery definition, because that's where, Cheryl, I thought you were saying that if the concern is that franchise law connects to the small brewery definition, we're fine keeping that original languages. It's introducing it into the brewery definition that we are concerned is going to raise problems for how breweries are structured now and how they're producing product.
So what I will say is that we will not take any straw poll votes on this issue today. And I will just ask all of you to convene again over the next couple of days to figure out how to resolve this so that the committee is clear what will make the most sense. Janet is clear about how to draft the final amendment. And so this part of the 1643 discussion, we can just table, for lack of a better word, until you guys come back and let us know what you decided amongst yourselves as an industry and a department. How's that? Great. Lovely. I know that we are pushing, we're not quite close to one. We have 2 language reviews to do. I wanted to know, Janet, was there any other part of 1643 that had a consensus that we could consider moving in, or we can just come back to it another day? You are on mute.
Just realized my computer said, you're muted. I'm not aware of any other discussions that have gone on. It doesn't mean they haven't, though.
Okay, that's fine.
didn't call me. So.
No, that's fine. I just mean, based on the analysis that we have so far and the provisions that we have moved in, it looks like we are in a good place with LD 1643. And so I will entertain a motion to table this bill.
So moved.
It's been moved by Representative Kenny, seconded by?
Seconded
Seconded by Representative Riley. The motion is to table. It's non-debatable. Karen, please call the roll.
Senator Hickman.
Yay.
Senator Hickman, yay. Senator Meermont.
Yeah.
Senator Meermont, yay. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCrate.
Yes.
Representative McCrate, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington. Representative Harrington, absent. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolph. Representative Dolph, absent. 10 in favor of the motion and 2 members absent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Karen. The motion prevails with unanimous vote. We have tabled LD 1643, and so I will close the work session on LD 1643. That concludes our work session for today. We now have 2 language reviews that Janet will share with us. And then when we finish that, I will ask the VLA Democrats to return to the link that I inadvertently dropped everybody off of earlier when I was trying to do something else. And so I hope we can go back there for 15 minutes or so we can get ready for tomorrow as well. So Janet, the floor is yours. Monday, I mean, get ready for Monday.
Certainly. Just a second, let me call it up on my screen. I inadvertently closed my own page.
I don't have 2 computers today, so that's why I'm making all sorts of Windows errors.
Oh, opened the wrong page, of course. 1 second. Okay. Here we go. So LD 1751 was about liquor to go at on-premises retailers, and then the ability of a distillery also to sell cocktails to go, and then to sell cocktails that include its spirits products at its tasting room. And those were enacted by Public Law 2021, Chapters 3 and 91, and those were set to expire September 10th. And you all agreed unanimously to, instead of, as the bill proposed, making those authorities last forever, to instead have them last until March 30th, 2025. So that's what this amendment provides. And then there is a fiscal note required. And if you look at it, it's a minor cost increase. And this is similar to the minor cost increase that was on the original bills.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee on this amendment review? Seeing none, we are ready to report it out.
Okay. The next one is a divided report, and it just needed a fiscal review. It was a straight ought to pass. This was an act regarding contributing to candidates and political action committees. It, for example, allows ballot question committees to contribute to candidates to the same extent as PACs, has inflation adjustments for individual contributions to separate segregated funds, and talks about separate segregated funds getting in-kind contributions from their parent entities. And so the majority report ought to pass, had a fiscal review, and there would be no fiscal note required. And that's what this is telling you.
Thank you. Anyone on the majority report have any questions about no fiscal note? Seeing none, thank you, Jen. We are ready to report. Oh, go ahead.
I actually would like to, I didn't warn you about this, so you could say no. I have a clarification question on an amendment you voted on Wednesday. I was tired when you voted and I forgot to ask a question.
Please ask, and just remind us
So-
of the bill, and you will tell us.
It was 1914, which is the wine transfer bill, and the majority, was it a majority? Sorry, can you look? Yes, a majority of the committee voted in favor of the proposed amendment language. And that proposed amendment language was what I drafted for the stakeholders, and it didn't address the technical issues in the bill because that wasn't what the concern was of the stakeholders, so I didn't put it in there. But I just want to show you really quickly again, we had gone through at the first work session, but not Wednesday, what those technical issues were. And I just want to see if the people who voted for that amendment mind clarifying these things, because I didn't ask. So this is the current law about that. That is supposed to be the law that says if you're an off-premise retailer of malt liquor and wine, you're not supposed to be selling or transferring your malt liquor or wine to other retailers. And that's why you need an exception like in the bill. But it talks about in this subsection 3A, which is included in the bill so that you can have a cross-reference to what's being enacted in section 2 of the bill. So you can see this language, and the language is going to be in there. And this was a provision that probably needed some clarification, but the subcommittee didn't have time to reach for 1643. So this is a whole section that's about selling malt liquor and wine, and yet this subsection only talks about liquor. So the idea would be to say that that's malt liquor or wine, just to be clear. It also, this prohibition is supposed to say if you're an off-premises retailer of malt liquor or wine, you can't sell your products or transfer them either to an on-premises or an off-premises retailer. That's how everybody understands the law to be. But what the law actually says is you just can't sell it to another off-premises retailer. It doesn't actually say on-premises, and that's because there's this phrase here that it's only about you can't transfer or sell to somebody licensed under this section. And this section is the off-premises retailer license section. Nobody disagreed when we talked about this earlier that that phrase probably shouldn't be in there. And I had talked to Larry and Babel about these, and he agreed. And then the last thing was that this is only talking about selling, but the wine transfer bill shows that there's clearly a prohibition on even just transferring without selling, but that's not what the law says. So the idea would be to make the law clear so that you understand why you need to create the exception in the bill to what maybe doesn't seem to be prohibited.
So if the Director Minnie will turn this camera on, are you gonna confirm for us that all of those technical changes are appropriate and necessary?
Yes, sir. I will confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I'm on the majority report, and I would say that those technical changes should be included in the amendment. Is there anyone who disagrees with that who's on the majority report? Seeing no objections, I do not think we need a new motion because it's not substantive.
I just wanted to make sure because I hadn't asked.
Appreciate it. If someone objects to that, please let me know and we can have a new motion to reconsider. Great. I see no objections. So with that, the committee will conclude its work for this morning. I appreciate everybody being flexible about it. We are in a good place. I think, Janet, can you tell us, have we reached 61% on this day?
Yes, sir. You reached it on Wednesday, actually.
I didn't know that. So I'm happy to know that we reached it at least by the end of the week as we were required to do. So with that, the committee will stand adjourned until Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning when we have three work sessions on medical marijuana. And again, I will ask the VLA Democrats to rejoin in the caucus link. It's the same link, and I'm gonna turn it back on as soon as I close this window. And we won't be long, I promise. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.